Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Clang. The black shadow mixed with aura and the green shadow mixed with yellow collided heavily. The katana in the Kabinarai's hand, which was almost as tall as Levi's height, and the 2 half-blade swords tightly held by Levi clashed fiercely, producing bright sparks. At this almost face-to-face distance, Levi noticed that the Kabinarai's blade also had fiery red patterns resembling blood vessels. This made him curse inwardly. The world government really equipped it with everything. The next moment, Levi felt an irresistible brute strength pressing down from the opponent's blade. He didn't resist it directly. Instead, he turned sideways and flew past, then used the traction of the steel rope to dart rapidly between the trees. Roar. Seeing its food about to escape, the Kabinarai roared and used the black sticky thread sprayed from its palms to chase after it. The 2 sides engaged in an intense one-on-one combat in the vast green sea of trees. Gradually, Levi discovered that although this guy had great strength and its black armor was indeed hard enough, its speed and agility were far inferior to his own, and its swordsmanship was also much more inferior. Perfect, I'll use you to test my new ability, Otherworld Monster. The next moment, Levi controlled the omnidirectional mobility gear to spray ice burst high-pressure gas again, instantly causing his speed towards the Kabinarai to surge. At the same time, he used the same trick again, spinning himself at super high speed. However, this time the change was different. The visible whirlwind became more numerous, denser, and thicker. In the blink of an eye, his figure disappeared, having transformed into a horizontally moving green dragon twister, sweeping the Kabinarai, who was swinging its blade to chop, into the dense Hotei. Wind breathing, first form, dust whirlwind gutter. This scene left Ikema, Hazumi, the Yubuyashiki family, and Shinobukacho, people from 3 different worlds, utterly astonished. Even couldn't help but marvel inwardly. Ackerman from the Titan world, using the breathing style from the Demon Slayer world to attack a technique user type special Kabinarai from the Kabinarai world on an island in the pirate world. What a wonderful scene. He turned to look at his Tori sitting beside him and said lightly. It seems Levi is making good use of the resources you bestowed upon him. Levi was her strongest Ackerman guard, so she used her authority as queen to secure some high-grade resources for Levi and Mikaza over the past few months. This included the wind-breathing style, perfect Type 1 cell enhancement serum, and a Parimsha system devil fruit. In addition, she had people renovation their omnidirectional mobility gear, half-blade swords, and clothing. Im naturally knew about these matters, as his Tori had to inform him in advance about anything she wanted. If he was busy, she could also inform the 4 Yubuyashiki sisters, and they would report back to him when he had time, which wouldn't be considered a violation. Levi chose his devil fruit ability quite well. Im watched the screen feed of Levi, who had defeated the technique user type Kabinarai in a few rounds by using the wind-breathing sword technique and was rapidly flying towards the central river again. Clearly, no matter how special this type of Kabinarai was, it was no match for the enhanced dwarf giant. Perhaps a Kabinarai in the new form could resist. Just as Im was wondering under what circumstances Levi would use his devil fruit ability, his sharp gaze caught the screen feed on another screen nearby. Enlarge Mima Amatori's viewpoint? Yes. A technician quickly typed on the keyboard controlling the 12 visual Den Mushi. After a few seconds, Mima Amatori, who was in combat, replaced Levi as the protagonist on the virtual large screen. West Blue Competition Zone, Roya Island. Roar. Suddenly, a great explosion occurred on the east side of the island, less than 2 kilometers from the central river, tearing through 300 to 400 meters of forest. In the center of the open ground, which had been completely reduced to ruins, a hazy figure stood within the dense smoke and dust. Mima. Outside the smoke and dust, a woman covered in ferocious black armor, with a faint blue light blooming from her chest, slowly lowered her right palm. Is this the new strength you gained after abandoning the new? Mekko looked at that figure with an expressionless face, asking a question she already knew the answer to. Yes. As a gust of wind blew away the smoke and dust, Mima Amatori, dressed in a pink suit, slowly appeared. A highly approachable smile still hung on his handsome face. Although the new can greatly enhance our mental power and even allow us to perceive others' fear emotions, it also cuts off the possibility of further improvement in physical ability, and it cannot consume devil fruit. What kind of inferior strength is that? Mima Amatori's gaze flashed with disgust as he looked at Meko's current appearance. He then turned the palm he had raised to face him, his gaze filled with appreciative radiance. He had just used it to block the fear energy bullet shot at him by the opponent. In comparison, the physique of sea-star people, the martial arts of the six powers, and this incredibly powerful hockey can be said to be high-grade strength comparable to divine power. Once I obtain a Logia system devil fruit, I can also become an element's deity like Lord Crocodile. Meko could only sigh in sorrow upon hearing this. Inferior, yet that was the strength you desired most back then. To obtain the strength of the new, do you remember how many human lives you sacrificed for Dr. Xiaowei to conduct experiments? She was one of them too. Hee, who would remember such insignificant matters? Mima Amatori chuckled dismissively. Oh, right, I heard you've become Captain Gus's woman. Congratulations. It seems you are also making effort to climb in your own way. So I won't kill you, but could you please also stay far away from me? Chapter 499, Cold Killing Intent. Mima Amatori's last words were actually well-intentioned, sincere advice. He didn't want to form grudges with a captain who held real power in the same department just for a woman now. Of course. He just didn't want to, not that he didn't dare. If Meko didn't listen to his advice and insisted on obstructing his operation, then he could only harden his heart and kill her. No matter what, he must obtain a top 10 result in this combat power competition. Compared to this gain, what did offending a CP new captain matter? Besides, he still remembered Vice Admiral Crocodile's phone number. Moreover, in Mima Amatori's view, that Captain Gus was just a sea-star person with limited aptitude, who only gained combat power comparable to a military vice admiral through the news virus enhancement. Although she was much stronger than his current self, that was probably the extent of her potential in this life. But he had infinite potential. Therefore, Mima Amatori looked down on Meko's judgment of people even more. She was just a foolish woman. Mima, I'll be honest with you. I came specifically to fight you this time. If you don't defeat me or kill me, don't even think about proceeding smoothly with the rest of the selection trial. Meko was expressionless, not caring in the slightest about his extremely harsh words. She had long since seen through his true colors. At the same time, she saw the black blade on her arms and the black armor on her back rapidly soften and begin to reshape. In the blink of an eye, both hands transformed into two 25mm caliber gun barrels attached with a black bayonet, while on her shoulders, a 90mm dark cannon barrel appeared. Let me show you how much power the new you look down upon possesses. Meko, whose face was half covered by the black armor, roared with a voice full of resolute determination. Purplish-blue energy radiance rapidly gathered inside the muzzles and cannon barrels. Following a brief, unknown buzzing sound, she resolutely launched a fierce bombardment and firepower coverage towards Mima Amatori's location. Bang 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 bang. Large amounts of purplish-blue energy bullets pulled out streaks of heart-palpitating streams of meteors in midair. Hey, Mima Amatori stomped his right foot fiercely on the ground, turning into a pink afterimage and rapidly shot out to the left. A series of fear energy bullets hit the position he had just been standing, immediately causing continuous cluster explosions. The surging expanding energy and blast wave lifted the ground up in chunks, shattering it. And the subsequent bullet clusters still tightly pursued Mima Amatori's afterimage. It should be known that the new's strongest point lies in mental power. Meko had long since skillfully mastered observation hockey using this advantage. However, because Mima Amatori had no fear towards Meko, the perception effect was somewhat weakened. Otherwise, even if someone was invisible, as long as they felt fear, they could still be precisely detected by the new and their location pinpointed. Swish swish swish. Mima Amatori displayed his speed to the fullest, constantly evading the sweeping energy bullets and the affecting explosion and air current in the vicinity in a Z shape. Although his observation hockey was slightly inferior compared to armament hockey, it was sufficient at this stage. On the other side, although the dense energy radiance and smoke and dust obscured her vision, Meko's gaze could still precisely follow Mima Amatori's slow movement. At the same time, the black gun barrels on both hands continuously maintained suppressing fire. As for the larger caliber cannon barrels on her shoulders, they temporarily ceased fire. Although their power was great, the consumption of mental power was also great. However, for this battle, she also had Captain Gus take her to visit several cities in the Titan world, and there she absorbed large amounts of fear emotions until she was about to reach the upper limit her will could bear before returning. Therefore, her current ammunition was quite sufficient. Even if she kept sweeping fire like this for a day and a night, it would be no problem. During this period, Mekko received very professional training and combat opinion at Cypher Pol headquarters, gaining a deeper understanding of the news advantages and disadvantages. Just like Mima Amatori said before, although it has a certain physical ability amplification effect on people, and at the same time also has the black substance that can be hard or sticky and freely shapeshift, providing attack methods and defense methods in melee combat. But this kind of melee ability is far inferior compared to the Fear Energy Bullet's long-range bombardment. Energy bullets as big as a bullet have power comparable to grenades. Energy bullets as big as a tennis ball are enough to blow up a house. If they were as big as a cannonball, buildings on a street could all be blown into ruins. Coupled with observation hockey's perception lock-on. Many instructors at Cypher Pol headquarters all believe that the new fundamentally does not need to engage in close-quarters melee combat with people. They just need to blow the opponent to death on the way they charge over. A Kabanrai warrior in new form is a bombing battalion all by themselves, and they can also absorb surrounding fear on the spot to replenish ammunition. Facing the indiscriminate bombardment, how many people can not feel fear? Therefore, Zephyr, who was just concurrently appointed as Fleet Admiral of Air Force Headquarters, has already applied to the command department. In the future, if anyone else chooses to enhance into the new form of Kabanrai warrior, they will be prioritized for transfer to the Air Force. At the same time, in the process of dodging back and forth, Mima Amatori gradually closed in on Mekko's distance. This caused his killing intent to condense into terrifying red radiance in his pupils. Instant transmission. Stomping his right foot rapidly and repeatedly, so fast that ordinary human eyes fundamentally cannot capture it, his figure instantly disappeared during the high-speed movement, letting this place be covered and submerged by the fear energy bullets that followed closely behind. This caused Mekko's pupils to shrink, and a sense of crisis surged into her heart. She decisively shot out a long black sticky thread from the center of her back, rapidly pulling herself towards a large tree behind her. The next moment, a sharp blade with bright red patterns on its surface sliced past from a distance of about 2 centimeters from her nose tip. Seeing this, while maintaining the posture of flying backward, she controlled the black cannon barrel on her left shoulder, firing a round of fear energy bullet towards the newly appeared Mima Amatori. Serpent breathing, 5th form, winding long snake. At the critical moment, the latter, using observation hockey's perception and the high-speed assault possessed by this sword technique, dodged past the energy bullet, almost scraping his scalp. At the same time, as he swept his long saber horizontally, a large pinkish-white snake immediately appeared, windingly pursuing towards Mekko's neck from the side. Although the phenomena produced by these breathing styles are special effects, they are not without killing power. Their inherent essence is still strong sword wind, which is what Sea Star people believe to be flying/attack. So once touched by these special effects, although they won't be burned to death, electrocuted to death, or bitten to death, they can still be cut to death or stabbed to death. Fortunately, Mekko also had the cannon barrel on her right shoulder. The fear energy bullet directly collided with the white snake's open gaping maw. Boom. Purplish-blue radiance exploded with a roar. A ring-shaped mass of white air current swept across the entire area. The produced deafening loud noise caused the participants within a few kilometers to all look sideways and gaze. Serpent breathing, 2nd form, narrow-head poison fang. But before the smoke and dust completely dispersed, Mima Amatori's voice and figure suddenly appeared behind Mekko, who had fallen to the ground because she was affected by the great explosion. Don't forget, he had armament hockey protecting his body. At the same time, a ferocious white snake mercilessly bit towards Mekko's neck. He really intended to kill Mekko, a woman who once deeply loved him and was willing to sacrifice for his plan. Chapter 500, Competition Between Two Worlds. Doing, a clash of metal loud enough to deafen ordinary people suddenly erupted between the three. Mima Amatori narrowed his eyes, looking at the black and gold twin swords that blocked his blade, and habitually put on a smile. You must be Mr. Tenjin Yuzui, the former Sound Hashira of the Demon Slayer world, and now a Jonin of the Sea Ninja Village on Wano Island? Ever since he heard that the world government would semi-forcibly make some other worlders participate in this multiverse combat power competition, he had checked a lot of files on key figures from the Demon Slayer world and Titan world at Cypher Pol headquarters. Of course, this was only the content he could see with his authority. But this was enough for Mima Amatori to recognize the appearance of every Hashira immediately and quickly flash through their relevant intelligence in his mind. After all, the other party was clearly here with ill intentions. Ah, that's right, I am that flamboyant man with 3 beautiful wives, so I cannot watch you destroy such a beautiful lady. Tenjin Yuzui also maintained a gentleman's smile. After joining the Sea Ninja Village, he had already learned about the concept of celestial dragons, so he no longer referred to himself as a god, but used man as a substitute. In the court, 2 men, who were both incredibly handsome despite having different styles, calmly looked at each other across their blades. And Meko didn't just stand there foolishly. She quickly did a backflip and jumped onto a high tree branch, increasing the distance from Mima Amatori, while silently observing Tenjin Yuzui's figure. That sounds interesting. Jonan Yuzui should know that a selection trial is being held on this island, right? You won't let me kill her, but what if she wants to kill me? Mima Amatori asked with an expression that seemed puzzled. At the same time, the force they were pressing onto their blades did not decrease at all. Both were testing the strength of the other. Soon, they quickly confirmed that their opponent in front of them had also enhanced the total cell count of their body. Well, I'm not very interested in saving men. Tenjin Yuzui exerted force with his wrist, forcefully pushing away Mima Amatori's blade, and looked at Mima Amatori with a confident and arrogant posture, tilting his neck back. You can continue to fight this lady, but as long as you threaten her life, I will definitely step in to stop you. Actually, he was one of those who were forced to participate in the competition. And because he had been a demon slayer for half his life, he still had a certain restraint when it came to killing people. Of course, if the other party was someone who absolutely had to be killed, he wouldn't hesitate, like a mission target or something. Because if he didn't kill them, it would definitely affect the basic life of himself and his 3 wives, which was the matter he absolutely would not allow to happen in his heart. So Tenjin Yuzui had already made a decision. In this selection trial, he would avoid killing people as much as possible while ensuring his own safety. Just right. He happened to see a woman with a graceful body and a face that, although mostly covered by black armor, he could still tell with his eyesight was definitely a beauty, falling into a fatal crisis. This ignited his heart of protection. Without much thought, he stepped in and saved her. And also found something to do for himself. That golden-haired lady with a rather flamboyant combat style, I'm a very powerful ninja, you know. Do you want to hire me as your guard for this selection trial? As for remuneration, just give me 1 million Bailey after it's over. Tenjin Yuzui turned his head and laughed loudly at Meko on the tree branch behind him. This. Meko on the tree branch hesitated. It wasn't that she couldn't afford the 1 million Bailey. It was because she had participated in this competition with the intention of defeating Mima Amatori using the strength of Nu, or dying at Mima Amatori's hands, to settle the various grudges of the past. But now it was clear that she had lost. So, should she refuse Jonan Yuzui's suggestion and continue fighting Mima Amatori, then go to her death? At this moment, Meko hesitated. If she hadn't been saved just now, but had been directly cut down by a single slash, that would have been the end of it. But now that she had just survived the great fear of death, she really couldn't muster the courage to face death a second time. Okay, I agree. I'm really being underestimated, huh? Since that's the case, then neither of you will live. Stay here. Just as Meko hadn't finished speaking, Mima Amatori's figure shot out dozens of meters like a cannonball, appearing before Tenjin Yuzui in the blink of an eye. The blood vessel patterns on his blade seemed to respond to the killing intent in his heart, emitting a fiery red flowing light. Serpent breathing, 5th form, winding long serpent. He once again used this sword technique from serpent breathing, which had the longest charge distance and the fastest speed. Immediately, a white snake with scales shimmering with fiery red ore bent its long body and fiercely lunged towards Tenjin Yuzui's face. But the latter laughed loudly. Ms. Meko, my ears heard you agree. Then, the next moment, the black and gold twin swords connected by a chain in Tenjin Yuzui's hand slashed downwards in front of him with incredibly unbelievable speed. This was a blade speed far exceeding his peak in the past. Sound breathing, 1st form, roar. From the visual effect visible to the naked eye, it was like a black and gold lightning, accompanied by a thunderous sonic boom and loud noise, striking the head of the white snake. A violent gunpowder explosion also followed. Humphrey. This forced Mima Amatori to use armament hockey to protect his entire body and retreat rapidly. In the process, he directly kicked out a Tempest Kick in midair. Tempest Kick. As his long leg trailed an afterimage across his front, the air was instantly torn into a vacuum state, forming a crescent-shaped light blue air current that flew out horizontally. Instant transmission. But Tenjin Yuzui instantly disappeared from his original spot, dodging the Tempest Kick. It turned out that he had also long since mastered this technique from the 6 powers. There was nothing for it, it was simply too useful. Most people who had the conditions to cultivate the 6 powers would choose it first. Sound breathing, 4th form, resounding slash without interval. The next second, when he reappeared in front of Mima Amatori, the special niche iron blade in his hand, which would explode upon contact, was already wildly dancing, transforming into a dense blade light that enveloped him. Serpent breathing, 3rd form, nest constriction. But Mima Amatori also had observation hockey. He had already adjusted the breathing rhythm within his body. The long saber in his hand, covered with a layer of Kabinari heart membrane, swung out a serpentine curved blade path. In an instant, a large amount of slashing trajectories, like a giant white python, coiled around his body, tangled and killed with Tenjin Yuzui's blade net. Boom 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 boom, clang 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 clang, continuous explosions mixed with dense blade collision sounds fiercely clashed, and the surging violent air current destroyed the already messy ground nearby even more thoroughly. This scene not only stunned Mekko on the distant tree branch but also made the audience from the four worlds blood boiling. Especially the people from the Kabanrai world and the Demon Slayer world. Although some people from the former who recognized Mima Amatori were strange as to why the son of the Shogun, the leader of the Hunter Guard, who was rumored to have died back then, would appear in the Sea Star world. But at this moment, they still loudly cheered him on. This was the most top-tier genius from their own world, even though his character was very bad. In Kongakaku's Shogun Castle, Yatsugawa Ayame and Kurasu, who had recovered their health, watched silently with complex feelings. Here on the Sea Star mainland, at this Air Force base, Hazumi was huddled in Ikama's arms, also quietly cheering for her older brother. As for the people from the Demon Slayer world, actually, not many people recognized Tenjin Yuzui, but after listening to Stella's introduction of him, they also cheered in unison without a word. At this moment, Mima Amatori and Tenjin Yuzui inexplicably became the representative contestants of the two worlds. Chapter 501, The Bloody First Night. The fierce battle between Mima Amatori and Tenjin Yuzui attracted more and more audience members to switch their screen feed viewpoint to their fight. Even the propaganda department's media division intentionally made it the main viewpoint. Tenjin Yuzui. After joining the world government, he not only served as the Jonin instructor of the sound breathing style at the Sea Ninja Village. He also voluntarily submitted his ancestral special gunpowder formula, the technology for forging exploding Nichiren blade, the manufacturing technology for mechanical ninja tools, and the method for cultivating ninja beasts. Because of this, he obtained a large amount of initial merit, far exceeding that of other Hashira. Using this merit, he first didn't hesitate to exchange for 4 tubes of perfect Type 1 cell enhancement serum, and then exchanged for the 6 powers basic martial arts cultivation method, life return cultivation method, armament hockey cultivation method, and observation hockey awakening method. Thus, his merit was almost entirely used up. But Tenjin Yuzui didn't feel it was a waste at all. Instead, he felt these things were excellent items that could be passed down through generations. This also made his strength already much stronger than Jiamai Haimjima, the stone Hashira. So, things are unpredictable. If the world government hadn't appeared, how could this sound Hashira, who was called the bottom of the 9 Hashira or even the weakest among the Hashira by many in Im's previous life, have had the opportunity to possess such strength? This directly led to Mima Amatori, who was fiercely fighting Tenjin Yuzui, feeling increasingly strained as time slowly passed. Such a fast blade, such a heavy blade, and such troublesome explosions and sounds. Mima Amatori gritted his teeth, his mind also becoming heavy. He originally thought that since he had also enhanced his total cell count and mastered armament hockey and observation hockey, he might gain some advantage. But he didn't expect to be suppressed from the start. Every blade clash caused a sharp pain in the web of his hand, and the close-range sonic boom sounds were constantly assaulting his ears. Also, that damned woman was watching him from a distance, which forced him to constantly divert some of his mind to stay vigilant, adding insult to injury. I can't keep fighting. Mima Amatori's gaze sharpened. His target was the top 10, he shouldn't waste so much effort in a selection trial. Moreover, he had already seen that there was no killing intent in this Jonin Yuzui's attacks. Although he was quite disdainful of such naive actions and thoughts, he had to admit it was something he could exploit. Immediately, using the strength from the collision and resulting explosion of their blades once again, Mima Amatori quickly used this strength to fly back, then without any unnecessary words, he turned and ran. He was gambling that Tenjin Yuzui wouldn't take the opportunity to attack his back. Is he leaving already? My score was almost complete. Tenjin Yuzui gave a slight shake head and sighed, feeling a bit regretful. At the same time, his observation hockey was tightly watching Mekko's commotion, because he felt there was a much higher chance of this foolish woman attacking him. But until Mima Amatori turned into an afterimage and disappeared into the jungle, Mekko just watched silently. Mima, our grudges are settled. In fact, if she and Tenjin Yuzui had teamed up, with the latter responsible for entanglement and herself for precise sniping, Mima Amatori definitely wouldn't have been able to run. But Mekko wanted to use this mercy to settle their past matters. This also made her feel relieved inside. Her entire mind instantly relaxed a lot. She directly removed the black armor from her face, revealing her bright appearance, then did a flip and jumped to Tenjin Yuzui's side. Jonin Yuzui, thank you for saving me. After this selection trial ends, I will give you 2 million Bailey as a reward. Mekko smiled as she looked at him. As expected, a gorgeous beauty. Tenjin Uzui proudly lifted his chin. He was proud of his accurate eyesight. It was this appearance that Meko found quite amusing, and she couldn't help but laugh out loud. You're really interesting. Where should we go next? I am your guard now, so wherever you want to go, I will follow. I just want to find a place with few people to wait for this competition to end. Good idea. The two chatted very congenially. One wanted to avoid killing as much as possible, and the other wanted to find a quiet place. They hit it off perfectly. However, their cheerful appearance made Captain Guts of the Cypher Paul headquarters felt a black line, and a sense of crisis unconsciously arose in his heart. Original copy. Because Mima Amatori tried to kill Meko, the anger that had arisen gradually mixed with a hint of sourness. But speaking of the person in the worst mood, that would have to be the audience from the Kabanrai world. When Mima Amatori turned and ran, the loud cheers and shouts of encouragement came to an abrupt halt. After reaction, there was a surge of angry scolding. It truly demonstrated what it means for greater expectations to lead to greater disappointment, vividly and clearly. In contrast, the citizens of the Demon Slayer world were incredibly excited. They had completely remembered the name Tenjin Uzui, and at the same time, they were more curious about the matters of the Demon Slayer Corps. It is believed that it won't be long before the Demon Slayer Corps, which had always been hidden from the world, will be completely exposed on the surface. The first selection trial on the 4 islands in the east, south, west, and North Sea areas was still ongoing. Gradually, the sky grew dim. Soon, dusk arrived and quickly walked into the night. The sky was filled with starlight covering the pitch-black night sky, and a large bright moon cast its pure moonlight. The environment on the island did not become quiet because of this. Instead, it became even more terrifying and bloody. Darkness is often the best accomplice for slaughter. This selection trial only started at noon, so the participants felt no fatigue at all. Moreover, most of them were Sea Star people, with extremely abundant stamina. Combat continuously for 1 or 2 days was not a problem. Listen. The screams of the dying, the gunshots, the explosion sounds, the sound of blades clashing, the sound of trees falling, and the angry roars emitted by some wild beasts or dinosaurs. The smell of blood in the air was becoming increasingly obvious. North Blue Arena, Garces Island. In the forest near the swampy zone to the west, a 12-meter-tall pure titan was grinning and playfully trying to grab a nimble figure rapidly darting around it. Flame-breathing, third form, blazing universe. Suddenly, surging gunfire flash appeared behind the pure titan's head. The bright radiance made it stop its movements subconsciously, but just as it was about to turn its head to look, the nape of its neck was cut off, sending blood splashing. This caused it to quickly lose strength, and it fell to the ground with a bang. Its naked body began to slowly dissipate into steam. Well done, Saimai. Kyojiro Rengoku landed steadily from midair and showed a hearty smile, giving a thumbs-up gesture to Saimai Shinazugawa, who was responsible for attracting the pure titan. But Saimai Shinazugawa found this overly enthusiastic approach a bit difficult to accept. He just nodded expressionlessly, then looked at the pure titan's body and commented coldly. This kind of pure titan only has a large physique and strength, its movements are quite sluggish, and its brain isn't very good either. Oh, right, its skin hardness is decent, but it's only about the same as a demon, it can't block the sharpness of a niche iron blade. Chapter 502, Desperate Expressions. Kyojiro Rengoku heard this and calmly looked at the pure titan that had evaporated to reveal its internal bones and pink flesh. A moment later, he said with a slightly heavy tone. I spent some time earlier learning about the history of the Titan world. The pain and despair these pure titans brought to the people of that world were several times, even more than 10 times, greater than what Mizunkibutsuji and the man-eating demons inflicted upon the people of our world. So don't underestimate them. They were once demons from another world. The night wind blew, causing the branches and leaves of the surrounding trees to rustle, allowing the scattered moonlight filtering through to shine upon the two Hashira. Under the solemn atmosphere, Kyojiro Rengoku and Saimai Shinazugawa quietly watched as the pure titan completely disappeared little by little. Swish swish swish, suddenly, from the left direction, a series of rapid whistling sounds rang out, causing the two to quickly become vigilant. Oh, how lucky to encounter two swordsmen the next moment, a young man about 2 meters in height, with a slender body, bluish hair, wearing dark blue jeans and a black coat, quickly appeared before the two. As he came to a stop, Kyojiro Rengoku and Saimai Shinazugawa felt a blast of strong wind rush towards them. So fast. Both felt their hearts sink, realizing they had encountered an expert. Huh, that's strange. You clearly look like swordsmen, and your gaze is sharp, but why is your aura so weak? The blue-haired youth stroked his chin, looking at them with doubt. As soon as he said this, the pressure felt by Kyojiro Rengoku and Saimai Shinazugawa doubled. This indicated that the opponent definitely possessed observation hockey, and likely armament hockey as well, while they themselves had not yet mastered these strengths, because... Ah, I see. At this moment, the blue-haired youth lightly tapped his right-hand fist on his left palm in a gesture of sudden realization, and said with excitement. You must be the legendary Otherworlders, right? I heard rumors before that Otherworlders have quite weak physiques. Adults are only equivalent to 7 or 8-year-old children from our side. I didn't expect to actually run into you. Bastard, you. Sanmai Shinazugawa, who always had a bad temper, had a gloomy expression after hearing this. His right hand also rested on the Nichiren blade at his waist. Even Kyojuro Rengoku, who was usually cheerful and open, became expressionless. Although what the opponent said was the truth, it just felt very grating to hear. Then let me personally experience what it feels like to fight another worlder. The blue-haired youth was eager to try, his 10 fingers like a doctor about to begin surgery, held loosely in front of him. Be careful, don't die too quickly, too early, that would be boring. The one who's going to die is you, idiot. Sanmai Shinazugawa was in a great anger, his Nichiren blade unsheathed with a tsing sound. He charged forward like a gale, his blade with streaks of green patterns rapidly swinging forward. Feel the pain brought by this wind that can blow away all infamy and false accusations. Wind breathing, second form, claw claw, Shina Take's. In an instant, 4 green claw-shaped hotaes capable of breaking metal and stone, flew horizontally along the rapidly swinging blade. Wow, your aura instantly became stronger, and you can even unleash flying slash attack? The blue-haired youth clicked his tongue in wonder upon seeing this scene, as expected of an otherworlder. What a strange sword master. However, talk was talk, and laughter was a laughter, but his response action showed no hesitation. He extended his right hand palm, and his 5 fingers began to rapidly lengthen. As a cold light appeared at his fingertips, the skin on his hand also became dyed with a layer of black metal luster. But it's useless against me. The blue-haired youth just casually swung diagonally in front of him. With a swish whistling sound, the 4 green hotaes shattered like glass. Flame breathing, 5th form, Flame Tiger. A large fierce tiger several meters high, entirely formed by raging flames, accompanied by an extremely realistic tiger roar, fiercely flopped over from the side. This was Kyojuro Rengoku directly using a killing move upon seeing the opponent's formidable strength. At the same time, Sanmai Shinazugawa also didn't expect the move to be effective immediately. Taking advantage of the blue-haired youth blocking the 4 hotaes, he had already used his own powerful sword technique. Wind breathing, 7th form, Strong Wind, Tanga Wind. This time he unleashed 5 or 6 tornado-shaped spiral hotaes, pushing forward mightily and shattering the ground along the way. Wow, these 2 moves look good, but why does this flame tiger have no heat? The blue-haired youth casually quipped. Immediately after, 12 long black needle-like spikes extended from his upper body, on his chest, back, arms, legs, and even his head. Their speed was astonishingly fast, as if they were shot out by some powerful mechanism. Because they were simply too fast, one could even see a layer of visible translucent air current appearing around the spikes. In the blink of an eye, all the tornado hotaes were pierced through, and a large body-sized flame tiger was also stopped 10 meters away. When the flame special effect disappeared, Kyojuro Rengoku was gritting his teeth and struggling to resist the pushing pressure of a black long spike with a flame-patterned Nichiren blade in his hand. Splurt, Sanmai. Kyojuro Rengoku looked in shock at Sanmai Shinazugawa, whose shoulder had been pierced. The latter sharply flew back 4 or 5 meters, allowing the black spike to be pulled out of his body, and then knelt on the ground, enduring the severe pain. Humphrey, I'm fine. Sanmai Shinazugawa glanced at the shoulder where a blood hole had appeared. After a few seconds, although the wound was still there, it was no longer bleeding much. This was another function of the breathing style, control of damaged blood vessels and ligation. Wow, you even have this kind of self-hemostasis ability? Interesting, interesting, this is too interesting. The blue-haired youth put both hands in his jeans pockets and praised with great interest. Oh right, we haven't introduced ourselves yet. I'm personally quite curious about the names of the first and second otherworlders who are about to die by my hand. My name is Bard Reddy, from the kingdom of Mike located in the new world of the Grand Line. I am a Parimshia system Thornfruit ability user. Hey, what about you? However, neither Kyojuro Rengoku nor Sanmai Shinazugawa had any intention of answering him, because their brains were thinking about the next fighting style. At the same time, Shinobu Kacho, Kageya Yashiki, and others from the Demon Slayer world who were also watching the live broadcast, all looked at the silent screen feed on the virtual screen with nervous expressions. What's this? If you don't answer properly, I'll get angry. The blue-haired youth frowned unhappily, and then said, I must make you say your names. If you don't want to be tortured for too long, hurry up and say them. As soon as he finished speaking, more black long spikes emerged from his body, on his chest, back, arms, legs, and even his head. Immediately after, he directly leaped into the air about 10 meters high, then curled up his body and began to rotate at high speed. Behold my crazy hedgehog! In the blink of an eye, the blue-haired youth had already turned into a large black spiky ball hardened with armament hockey. But Kyojuro Rengoku and Sanmai Shinazugawa were not people who would sit and wait for death. The two quickly inhaled a large breath of oxygen, and with great rapport, simultaneously unleashed their strongest sword techniques. Flame breathing, secret technique, 9th form, Rengoku. Wind breathing, 9th form, Iton Typhoon. All the audience from the 4 worlds who stayed up late to watch the live broadcast saw a fierce fire dragon seemingly from hell, accompanied by 2 long, ribbon-like green large hotes, colliding head-on with that large black spiky ball that also looked several meters in body size, like heavenly thunder meeting earthly fire. Roar, strong wind capable of breaking the trees within a 100-meter radius swept across in the court. But all of this came quickly and went quickly. When all the commotion dissipated with the night wind, the blue-haired youth was seen standing in the court with slightly disheveled clothing, while Kyojuro Rengoku and Sanmai Shinazugawa lay on the broken ground, their faces full of pain and covered in blood. How could this be? People from various places in the Demon Slayer world revealed desperate expressions. Chapter 503, Unwillingness and Shock. If this were an anime playing right now, a very stirring and tense background music would likely have started. For example, as long as you're alive, you must keep fighting. Or Kyojuro Rengoku and the others' main theme. Demon Slayer Core. Watched the scene of the two deeply trapped in a desperate situation on the large screen, sighing inwardly. However, he had no intention of intervening to rescue them. The overall value of Kyojuro Rengoku and Sanmai Shinazugawa had not reached the point where he would look at them differently, let alone treat them specially. If they really died like this at the hands of a passers-by in the world, then, so be it. These Hashira might be considered important characters in the Demon Slayer world, but in the Sea Star world, they could only be considered characteristic characters. Their strength was insufficient, and their luck was lacking. It wasn't strange for them to be killed. As for the Sound Hashira, Tenjin Yuzui, the world government actually had people secretly watching him. How could this happen? That's the Flame Hashira and the Wind Hashira. Kamado Tanjiro murmured in disbelief. Beside him, Nezuko Kamado, Zenitsu Agatsuma, and Inuzuka Hashibira were all kneeling on the tatami like him, staring nervously at the screen feed on the virtual screen. Since coming to the world, to Wano Island, after Nezuko Kamado returned to being a human, she went to the Yubuyashiki estate every day to learn some knowledge, etiquette, and skills that Eastern women were expected to know, under the guidance of Januimon. Recently, she had also met Shirley, a sister from the merfolk tribe who had arrived on Wano Island not long ago. As for the 3 little ones, Jinya Shinazugawa, Kanao Tsuyuri, and the underage children from the original Demon Slayer Corps, they were sent to the Sword Pavilion to study cultural knowledge while continuing to practice swordsmanship. However, they were already 16 years old this year, and would likely be arranged to the Ministry of Police Affairs next year. Speaking of which, Inuzuka Hashibira finally knew how to write his own name. This time, they specifically took a week off to watch this multiverse combat power competition, but they didn't expect to witness such a terrifying scene on the very first night. What should we do? What should we do? What do we do now? Are Brother Rengoku and the others going to die? Run, run. Zenitsu Agatsuma was so scared his teeth were chattering, while Inuzuka Hashibira was yelling aggressively with a fierce aura, "Damn it, this is so annoying. I wish I could be there. What nonsense are you spouting? Even the 2 Hashira aren't their opponents, what use would it be if you went?" Zenitsu Agatsuma just felt like this guy had gone crazy again. If I could, I would also want to appear there, even if it's just to buy them some time. Kamado Tanjiro clenched his fists, pursing his lips as he said in a deep voice. North Blue Arena, Jarsa's Island. Let's shift our viewpoint through the virtual screen feed to the scene where Kyojuro Rengoku and Sanmai Shinazugawa are located. How impressive. You were able to injure me even without armament hockey. You truly worked hard. Bardretti lowered his head and glanced at his outer coat and jeans that had been cut open. He could faintly see the slender, bleeding cuts underneath, and his expression immediately turned ice cold. These wounds not only mocked his insufficient hockey training, allowing 2 weak otherworld sword masters to break through his defense just like that. They also represented that if the opponent had attacked a vital position, he would now be severely injured even if not dead. He felt he had been careless. Damn it. Sanmai Shinazugawa glared back unwillingly, while furiously questioning himself in his heart, is this how it ends? Is this as far as I can go? He thought, If he could get a tube of cells enhancement serum, if he could also cultivate hockey, then the one lying on the ground right now should be the opponent. Looking at your gazes, I suppose I won't be able to get your names no matter how much I ask, right? Bard Reddy's eyes flickered with vicious killing intent. In that case, then go die. I'll give you a nice code name. As soon as his voice fell, his right hand's 5 fingers stretched and sharpened again, piercing through the air like 5 black spears towards the faces of Kyojuro Rengoku and Sanmai Shinazugawa. What a pity, where are there so many ifs in this world? Sanmai Shinazugawa showed a bitter smile on his face. The image of his younger brother, Jinya Shinazugawa, appeared in his mind. Fortunately, the misunderstanding between us has been resolved, otherwise I would truly have to go to Yami with regret. Whoosh! Whoosh! Bang! Just as the two were about to die from the sharp points, their bodies involuntarily flew backward. The position where they had just fallen was pierced and shattered by 2 long, sharp points. Who is it? This question simultaneously appeared in the minds of the 3 people on the scene and all the audience watching the live broadcast. Kyojuro Rengoku and Sanmai Shinazugawa subconsciously looked up, only to see a face they had never dreamed of. Mizn Kibatsuji. Originally, these Hashira didn't recognize Mizn, as they had never actually encountered him in person. However, after coming to the world, they had all seen photos of Mizn through their respective department channels. When they heard that Mizn Kibatsuji was imprisoned in Impel Down, they felt a sense of relief, but also regret that they hadn't killed him. But how could this guy appear here now? Also, did he just save them? At the same time, most of the audience were curious about who this person who suddenly appeared was. It seemed he had pulled Kyojuro Rengoku and Sanmai Shinazugawa back using 2 pink lines shot from his left palm. Fortunately, Stella's narration appeared in time. This person also originates from the Demon Slayer world. His name is Mizn Kibatsuji. He was originally the progenitor of the man-eating demon and has lived for 1,000 years. However, after taking the blue spider lily with the help of the world government, he has transformed from a man-eating demon who needed to eat people and had a fear of sunlight, into, in a sense, a perfect being and a perfect human. He is currently serving as a senior researcher at the Biochemical Research Institute under the Academy of Science of the world government. Therefore, Mr. Mizn Kibatsuji is not only the world's strongest among the Demon Slayer humans today, but also the person with the highest position among the Demon Slayer humans within the world government. After the lengthy introduction, many people marveled at Mizn's 1,000-year lifespan and discussed the descriptor perfect being. Conversely, the part about being a man-eating demon didn't attract much attention. Although it was said he ate people, no one had seen it with their own eyes, and wasn't it said he no longer ate people? It was truly difficult to have a significant feeling about such a matter without personally experiencing the terror. Most of the citizens of the Demon Slayer world instead developed a sense of anticipation towards Mizn Kibatsuji. They truly hoped that this world's strongest from their own world could be more capable, so they would have an object of spiritual reliance. This is humanity. One wondered what the members of the Demon Slayer Corps would feel if they knew. Mizn Kibatsuji lowered his head, appreciating the wonderful expressions on Kyojuro Rengoku and Sanmai Shinazugawa's faces, while also showing them a very gentle smile. Gentlemen, how does it feel to have your lives saved by the person you've always wanted to kill? Thank you very much to the very generous Mr. Gushing Steward for the 200 Kidian coin tip. Bo. Thank you for your support and encouragement. Chapter 504, I'm a Human. Mizn Kibatsuji's sudden appearance surprised even him, who felt the dramatic timing was too strong. The Demon Slayer Corps Hashira, facing an insurmountable enemy, were rescued by the demon progenitor himself. It's likely that both Kyojuro Rengoku and Sanmai Shinazugawa, the individuals involved, as well as the former Demon Slayer Corps members watching, were all having a stampede of grass mud horses running through their hearts at this moment. But for this guy to actually take the initiative to get involved, it's really starting to get interesting, mused in his heart, his mood inexplicably brightening. He particularly enjoyed seeing the various changes these canon characters underwent in the Sea Star world. Husband, this Mizn Kibatsuji has actually lived for over 1,000 years? And he's a perfect being? Is he particularly strong? At this moment, Empress Historia, sitting beside him, asked curiously. Even Mikasa, standing behind her as a royal guard, was observing the screen feed of Mizn Kibatsuji with curious eyes. Remember, living longer doesn't necessarily mean being stronger. In the future, you will see many long-lived, even eternal life beings, so get used to viewing them with ordinary eyes as soon as possible. Im glanced over, giving calm guidance, while Historia listened respectfully. As for Mizn Kibatsuji's strength, I haven't really paid much attention. Stussy, you tell us. Yes. Stussy nodded, then quickly recalled various information about Mizn in her mind, and introduced him softly, according to the latest report from the Biochemical Research Institute. After Miznkibutsuji became a perfect being, he mastered all the basic techniques of the 6 powers in just 3 days. At the same time, he awakened observation haki and armament haki, with the armament haki being stronger. It's worth mentioning that Miznkibutsuji himself can release a mental power shockwave similar to Conqueror's haki, and it also possesses superphysical destruction. After Warden Columbus's inspection, it was found that it is not Conqueror's haki condensed with will and spirit, but very pure mental power. Moreover, his control ability over this mental power shockwave is insufficient, making selective attack impossible. After hearing this part, Im was not surprised. Although theoretically, as the former demon progenitor and now a perfect being, it would be normal for Miznkibutsuji to awaken Conqueror's haki. However, his overly cautious and timid personality, as well as the lingering fear of Yoriichi Tsujikuni deep within his heart, severely obstructed and affected the appearance of Conqueror's haki. Clearly, with Mizen's current strength and ability, he no longer needed to fear an opponent of Yoriichi Tsujikuni's level. But psychological trauma, though invisible, is a real problem. If I find an opportunity to let Miznkibutsuji personally defeat Yoriichi Tsujikuni, perhaps it will be possible for him to regain his initial spirit and confidence. Im secretly pondered this matter in his heart, whilst Stussy brought up another matter. Also, Miznkibutsuji has already absorbed a blue light heart from a new form Kabinurai and a prisoner with a bounty of 230 million Bailey. So he should now also possess the new special ability, a combined physique of strong C-star people, and he is also a Paramsha system glint fruit ability user. According to Warden Columbus's evaluation, the current Miznkibutsuji in Impel Down can perhaps only be suppressed in terms of strength by himself and Magellan. And this is also because his armament haki has only just been mastered, and there are still deficiencies in quality. At this point, Im finally took Miznkibutsuji seriously. He really didn't expect this guy to be so comfortable in Impel Down, practically like a fish in water. Blue Spider Lily, the news Blue Light Heart, prisoners with bounties over 100 million, these are all considered high-grade resources in the current world government. Then what about the control over him? Although his shadow has been returned to him, the pet ring is still on Miznkibutsuji's body. Stussy reported softly. Im nodded. Although with Miznkibutsuji's personality, even if the ring restriction were lifted, he probably wouldn't make a move to rebel against the world government. He is a guy who really likes living a peaceful life. But as the saying goes, people's hearts can change. Also, his ability in mimicry is too powerful, far more formidable than the Paramsha system copy fruit. Honestly, if Miznkibutsuji killed someone and then transformed into their appearance, the current world government would really have no way to distinguish it. With his personality, he would most likely choose to disappear into the Great Sea, find a place, and live a carefree life. This, of course, cannot be allowed. Right, informed the Biochemical Research Institute and Impel Down to pay attention. Tell them to add a rule to the pet ring, which is to prohibit Miznkibutsuji from touching the Eldians of the Titan world. Im suddenly thought of something and issued the order in a stern tone. This caused confusion for Empress Historia and Mikasa, but he showed no intention of explanation, merely thinking to himself. Once Mizn absorbs the Eldian lineage factor, Ymir in the coordinate space might be able to control him. Just think about it. What kind of situation would it be if the current Miznkibutsuji still had the power of the 9 Titans, or what would be the result if Ymir understood the genetic makeup of a perfect being? Regardless of which, the potential for accidents is too great, so this must be avoided. On the other side. On Galsa's Island, the selection trial venue in the North Blue Sea area. Who are you? Are you also an otherworlder? But your aura isn't weak. For some reason, Bard Reddy, facing Miznkibutsuji, inexplicably became nervous. A sense of crisis from his subconscious made his hair stand on end. Even though the other party was just a short guy less than 1.8 meters tall. Oh? Seeing that Kyojiro Rengoku and Sanmai Shinazugawa were still dumbfounded, Miznkibutsuji's gaze swept over them. But just this one glance made Bard Reddy feel as if he had been seen through, inside and out, and he subconsciously took 2 steps back. That's right, I'll kill you first, then chat with these acquaintances. What did you say? Just as Bard Reddy was about to sneer a few times, his vision blurred. When a huge sonic boom exploded by his ear, his line of sight had completely gone dark. Only his consciousness had time to sigh in his heart at the unbelievable nature of the matter. So fast. In the world perceived by his observation haki, he could clearly see a slender black meat thorn shooting out from the other party's right hand index finger. But its speed was simply too fast, his body had no time to react at all. No. He actually used armament haki, but only managed to harden a trace of black at the point of attack on his brow. But such a hasty defense was as fragile as tofu under that supersonic meat thorn. A Paramsha system thorn fruit ability user actually died from another person's spike. But as Bardretti fell to the ground with a blood hole in his brow, Mizun Kibutsuji's gaze had already turned back to Kyojuro Rengoku and Sanmai Shinazugawa. It was like casually pinching a mosquito to death. We are all people from the same world. Why don't we let go of the past and huddle together for warmth within this world government? He said calmly, extending a finger and shooting out 2 more slender meat thorns. Although the latter were extremely vigilant and even tried to dodge and resist, they had no such ability under their severe injuries and could only watch as they pierced into their abdomens. What are you doing? Kyojuro Rengoku questioned loudly. Don't be afraid, I'm not a demon anymore. Like you, I'm a human. Chapter 505, Mizun Kibutsuji's proposal. Hearing Mizun Kibutsuji claim he was a human, Kyojuro Rengoku and Sanmai Shinazugawa both stood with mouths agape, not knowing how to answer. However, as their entire bodies began to grow warm, especially after the pierced wounds developed an unbearable strange itch, they couldn't care about their complicated feelings anymore and quickly lowered their heads to check on their respective injuries. This is. The two were shocked to see that the multiple blood holes on their bodies were already healing at an incredible speed. At the same time, their originally pale expressions and lips due to excessive blood loss were visibly recovering their redness. This was Mizun Kibutsuji's current powerful ability. Having already acquired sufficient biological knowledge and medical knowledge, he combined this with his own cellular level control ability and the glint fruit's X-ray vision ability. Not only did he become more clean and efficient in terms of killing, but in terms of saving people, he also far surpassed most doctors and medical equipment. Theoretically, even if someone lost their head in front of him, as long as he wanted, he could reattach it. There was also a prerequisite here. That was, the treated person could not resist or obstruct his control over their entire body. For example, someone who had mastered life return could actually to a certain extent prevent Mizun Kibutsuji from doing as he pleased, or even acting wantonly, within their body. As for how much effect it had, that depended on how profound their mastery in life return was. Of course, the best method was to prevent Mizun Kibutsuji's biological tissue from invading the body, such as with armament hockey or some kind of armor or the like. Therefore, his ability was actually not completely invincible, it could barely be considered a first encounter kill type. Given the injuries you two just sustained, if not for me, I believe you wouldn't have lived much longer. So you could say I saved you twice. Can we have a proper talk now? Mizun Kibutsuji, in a neat black suits, maintained a seemingly very gentle smile. Thank you. Thank you very much. In the end, it was still the more mature Kyojuro Rengoku who stood up and replied. However, we could actually choose to forfeit. At that time, someone would naturally take us to the medical ship. Saying this, he was seen raising his wristband, which had a red button on it, and showing it to Mizun. His meaning was that the life-saving grace was better counted as one instance. But looking at his gaze, he doesn't look like he'll forfeit, does he? Mizun Kibutsuji glanced at the expressionless Sanmai Shinazugawa and smiled. Top 10 is very important to you, right? These words made the latter's gaze flicker. Indeed. Kyojuro Rengoku helplessly shook his head and said. Alright, what do you want to talk about? I also want to know why you saved us. I actually already said it just now. I hope that we who are people from the same world can stick together. Mizun Kibutsuji touched his collar and spoke of the idea he had harbored for some time. I have already learned that the world government opens one stargate connecting to other worlds every year. This means that every year in the future, there might be a batch of other worlders like us arriving at this world, and as time passes, they will inevitably form groups and factions of various sizes. Since that's the case, why don't we utilize the time advantage and unite as early as possible? At this moment, Sanmai Shinazugawa looked at him with cold eyes and asked. If we're sticking together, there must be a center, which is the leader. I don't think you are willing to, like us, serve Yubuyashiki as Oyakata-sama. Of course not. Yubuyashiki and them can only be considered my descendants. Where is the logic of an ancestor serving their descendants as master? Mizun Kibutsuji retorted with a strange expression. Moreover, whether it's strength or status within the world government, no matter how you look at it, I am the most suitable to be the leader. Can you possibly find a more suitable candidate? Sanmai Shinazugawa was speechless with an ugly expression. Beside him, Kyojuro Rengoku, after a moment of silence, asked. Even if we unite, what use is it? Sanmai Shinazugawa also followed up and asked. What do you want us to do for you? Since it's a union, of course, we should help each other. The simplest is information exchange. We are in different departments, and this is helpful to everyone. Mizun Kibutsuji smiled, first glancing at a few surveillance tendenmashi on a distant tree branch. After confirming there were no outsiders within a few hundred meters, he said words that left the two dumbfounded. Also, I can make your total cell count reach the level of C-star people, and it will be the level of exceptionally talented C-star people. What? How is this possible? Mizunkibutsuji looked at their wonderful expressions, pursing his lips, and said in a low voice without moving his lips much. Not only did I fully participate in the research and development of the perfect Type 1 cellular enhancement serum, but even the core materials were the lineage factors I provided. As long as I can collect your lineage factors, I can manufacture it at any time. Besides that, the new form of the Kabinari virus, I can also replicate. But before you master life return, it's better not to use it, unless you like living while clutching your neck. Sanmai Shinazugawa finally came back to his senses and hurriedly asked. So you mean you can enhance our total cell count, and even enhance every person from the Demon Slayer world? That's right, this is the benefit of having me as your leader. How about it? Mizunkibutsuji's mouth curved up, looking a little smug. It must be said, Sanmai Shinazugawa was already tempted. But as soon as he thought of the other party previously being a man-eating demon, and even the demon progenitor, he felt conflicted and resistant. Mizunkibutsuji, possessing the glint fruits ability, naturally saw what he was thinking. I'll say it again, I am no longer a demon, I am a human, and furthermore, the Yubuyashiki family's ancestor. I have finished speaking. After you go back, you can discuss it with the others. After speaking, he turned around, preparing to leave. At this moment, from behind him sounded Kyojiro Rengoku's voice. Excuse me, if we refuse, what do you plan to do? Nothing much. In our world, there are still quite a lot of people. If you are unwilling, someone else will naturally be willing. But I can guarantee, their growth speed will definitely be faster than yours. Swish. As soon as the words fell, Mizunkibutsuji disappeared from the spot, leaving behind only Sanmai Shinazugawa and Kyojiro Rengoku standing on the spot, hesitating and pondering. Because surveillance Tendenmashi cannot transmit sound, even the audience who were constantly paying attention here did not hear a single word of the dialogue between them. Meanwhile, over at the East Blue competition venue, Jitamiyaka and Michiro Takido, who were both former Demon Slayer Core Water Hashira and Mist Hashira, also encountered trouble. The scenery of the night seaside beach was actually quite beautiful. Moonlight sprinkled on the sea waves produced a shimmering visual effect, giving people a feeling that every water spray was emitting silver light. But because of the three people's nervousness standoff in the court, the atmosphere appeared very grim and oppressive. I really didn't expect that someone would actually have the same idea as me. Just about 30 meters away from the two, stood a blonde-haired and blue-eyed young man holding a black sheathed long saber, wearing black suits, black leather boots, and a white shirt with a black tie. My name is Morgan William. I'd like to ask, is there any possibility of cooperation between us? His tone was amiable, and his attitude was polite and measured. Rather than being someone who came to fight, a competitor vying for a top 100 spot, he was more like a proper nobility gentleman. Chapter 506, Mist and Steam. Cooperation? Jitamiyaka and Michiro Takido exchanged glances, feeling utterly baffled. They had thought they were about to fight right away. But as the saying goes, you don't hit someone who offers a smiling face. Since the other party was so polite, they couldn't just ignore him. So, although a bit awkward, they introduced themselves. My name is Jitamiyaka. I'm from the Demon Slayer world and currently serve as a headquarters lieutenant commander in the Marine headquarters. Michiro Takido. I'm from the same place as him and currently a member of Cypher Palate. William raised an eyebrow, looking at them in surprise. He hadn't expected to encounter two other worlders, and members of the world government at that. This made him instinctively and quickly think about the potential uses for them in his brain. Because he was inherently a believer in the law of the jungle, someone who was profit-driven and would even resort to any means to achieve his goals. To put it bluntly, he was a typical pirate, but because he hadn't had the chance to debut yet, he was still an innocent civilian without a bounty. But his ambition had already been ignited. Regardless, let's have a fight first. We can talk after we're done. William always liked to judge what attitude he should take towards others based on their strength, and at the same time, let the other party know what attitude they should use when speaking to him. Alright. Jitamiyaka and Michiro Takido weren't the type of personalities who liked to talk nonsense either. The two exchanged glances again. This time they were discussing who would make the first move. In the end, Michiro Takido stepped forward first because, relatively speaking, Jitamiyaka's strength was a bit greater. However, Jitamiyaka also knew that in terms of talent, Michiro Takido was superior. He was just too young in age. In fact, when they first arrived in this world, the world government had considered letting Michiro Takido and Kamado Tanjiro study together at the Sword Pavilion. But at his own request and under the strong suggestion of Kageya Yubuyashiki and others, after an assessment of his strength and cultural aspects, he was still given the treatment of an adult. However, the world government wouldn't go so far as to let an underage child participate in missions that required killing. Therefore, whether at the Ministry of Police Affairs or the current Cypherpol headquarters, he was only assigned to serve as an instructor for mist breathing. Although in the canon, 7 years later, they made an exception and deployed the 15-year-old Rob Lucci, that was because the child's talent was simply too high and couldn't be viewed as an ordinary child. Oh? You're not planning to attack together? How considerate. Then I thank the two of you. William smiled slightly, simultaneously drawing the long saber from his left hand with his right hand, and introduced it. The blade's name is Yukbashiri. It has a small irregular temper pattern, and is one of the 50 skillful grade blades. He had received this for free from the owner of a small blade shop in Logetown, but he had already decided in his heart that if he had the chance in the future, he would repay the other party tenfold. For example, by opening the largest blade shop in the world for them. That would require money, people, strength, and even more so, influence. Nichiren blade. Muichiro Takido also drew half of his blade, whose surface shimmered with a light blue layer, and responded somewhat indifferently. He hadn't experienced the matters from the canon yet, and his memory hadn't recovered either. Then, I'll attack first. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a crisp swish as the blade was drawn from its sheath. He held the blade with both hands and thrust forward. At the same time, thick white mist surged around him, enveloping his figure, making it impossible to see his subsequent movements and blade path. It gave William the feeling of a surging wave of clouds and mist rushing towards him. Mist breathing, first form, hanging sky distant mist. His speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the clouds and mist had engulfed William's entire body. The next second, as the mist gradually dissipated, Muichiro Takido's figure reappeared behind William. However, the expression of this genius youth showed no sign of joy. Instead, he frowned and looked back, surprised to find that William was still standing in place. Only the left side of his back had a hole, and faint white mist seemed to be rising from inside the hole. That is. Jitamika, watching from a distance, his expression turned stern. Ah, I forgot to mention earlier, I'm also a devil fruit user, a Logia system steam fruit ability user. I wonder if you can understand that. William patted his chest, which had returned to its original state, and turned around in surprise to look at Muichiro Takido. But your speed is really fast, and that sudden surge of mist. Are you an ability user too? He had also trained in swordsmanship for a few years in Shimatsuki clan village before, feeling that he had just scratched the surface in this area. In the East Blue, he had hardly encountered any opponents who could suppress him. This also made the value of Muichiro Takido and Jitamika in his heart gradually increase. Mist breathing, first form, hanging sky distant mist. However, Muichiro Takido clearly had no interest in speaking further with him and launched another rapid thrust towards William, causing the latter to put away his smile and become serious. Jet. Spray. With a roar and a loud noise, a mass of white mist exploded beneath William's feet. Amidst the surging heat wave, a large amount of sand splattered. His legs had transformed into high-temperature steam spraying backward. Duang, the light blue blade wrapped in wisps of white mist fiercely collided with a blade with a small irregular temper pattern coated in a layer of high-temperature steam. As mentioned before, the special effect of breathing style is essentially a tangible sword wind. This resulted in a scene where two air currents, one cold and one hot, and heat clashed against each other, reaching a stalemate. Although Muichiro Takido didn't use the cell's enhancement serum, under the amplification of breathing style on his physical ability, he could temporarily possess strength comparable to a headquarters officer. As for William, he was just an ordinary C-star person who had trained in swordsmanship for 3 or 4 years. If it weren't for the power assistance from the steam jet, he might not even be able to suppress the former in a pure strength comparison. However, his advantage lay in stamina. And his biggest advantage was, of course, his Logia system ability. After William realized his swordsmanship was inferior to his opponent's, he immediately performed a full-body element transformation without a word, completely turning into a mass of high-temperature steam and enveloping the other party with a whooshing sound. This is what you call being unreasonable. Mist breathing, third form, scattering mist splash. Muichiro Takido also noticed that although he couldn't injure William, the opponent's steam could be blocked by sword wind. He immediately unleashed a wide-range sword technique. He rotated his body while rotating his blade, releasing more, denser white mist. At the same time, he himself also disappeared within the mist. However, the next moment, he suddenly reappeared and, in a sliding posture, cut through the mass of steam that William had manifested into. Mist breathing, fourth form, shifting flow slash. This sword technique also conveniently replenished the gradually dissipating mist special effect, allowing his figure to once again disappear into it. The two streams of white mist, one real and one fake, continued to mix together like this. The current situation was that Michiru Takedo couldn't injure William, and William, who didn't have observation hockey yet, couldn't find Michiru Takedo. Moreover, he had only recently eaten the fruit, so the total amount of steam was limited. It was difficult to cover the entire 100-meter radius, so he could only constantly dash left and right, trying to find the other party. However, with the high temperature of the steam present, the temperature in the court was rising at an extremely fast speed. Chapter 507, I Saw Everything About You. Usually, the seaside at night is very quiet, free from chaotic noise, with only the gentle sound of the wind and the beautiful sound of the waves. But on Yasnaya Island in the East Blue, the sound of the wind was covered by continuous sharp screams, and the sound of the waves was pushed back by the clanging sound on the beach. Michiru Takedo, using the thick mist fog, would sometimes become invisible and sometimes appear to unleash powerful sword techniques, clashing head-on with Yukbashiri in William's hand. Every clash produced a piercing friction sound and flickering spark. The two darted and collided rapidly within the white mist and steam, engaging in fierce back-and-forth combat. As time passed little by little, the sound of heavy panting in the court became noticeable. Jitomiyuka, watching from a distance, frowned deeply, because the heavy panting came precisely from Michiru Takedo. Breathing style itself is a cultivation method that allows one to absorb a large amount of oxygen in a short period, instantly increasing physical ability significantly, thereby temporarily possessing physical ability comparable to a demon. Although constant concentration can greatly extend the duration of the amplification, the higher the intensity of the combat, the shorter this duration will be accordingly. The key lies in the word stamina. The combat between the two sides had already lasted for nearly 2 hours, and considering that Michiru Takedo was not yet an adult, his stamina must be close to exhaustion, right? To be honest, the fact that he could last this long was entirely thanks to the invisibility effect of mist breathing. If it were his own water breathing, he would have likely been defeated long ago. It must be said, both Jitomiyuka and Michiru Takedo, who was currently in combat, profoundly experienced the power of the Logia system. As for the sea-star person's stamina, they had witnessed it many times before. Jitomiyuka could tell that even if he stepped in now, it would be futile, because neither of them had the means to injure William, and they certainly couldn't outlast him in terms of stamina. However, because he stood far away, although he could feel the heat wave rushing towards him, under the cool sea breeze, he didn't realize how difficult Michiru Takedo's true situation was at this moment. In the court, Michiru Takedo was already drenched in sweat, feeling a burning pain like swallowing flame with every breath. He was like playing hide-and-seek in a high-temperature sauna with a steam person. Furthermore, to have enough mist fog to conceal his figure, he had to constantly use sword techniques to create new special effects, as the duration of breathing-style special effects was quite short. This caused his entire body temperature to have already reached 38 degrees Celsius, and it was still showing an upward trend. His heart was beating so fast it felt like it would burst out of his chest cavity. Michiru Takedo hadn't considered transferring the position, which would make the temperature more bearable. But how could William not think of the matter that he could think of? The latter relied on his jet speed and element transformation that ignored damage, frequently intercepting Michiru Takedo, who was trying to escape, trying to limit the combat range between the two sides to the center of the court. William had already figured out the greatest value of these two otherworlders. But to gain the upper hand in the upcoming cooperation, he had to demonstrate his strength and potential, and then obtain victory in this combat. Ho! 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 Michiru Takedo was extremely tired and uncomfortable at this moment, because of the heat. Both the environment and his body were hot, so hot that his consciousness began to blur. Although every swing of his blade could clear away the surrounding steam, providing a brief moment to catch his breath, he could already feel the niche iron blade in his hand becoming unusually heavy. This was a sign that his stamina had reached its limit. And the most despairing thing was that no matter what he did, he couldn't injure the opponent in the slightest. It must be said, the element transformation ability was sometimes truly abnormal and invincible, which made him desire armament hockey even more. At the same time, he made up his mind that if he had a chance to go back alive, he must get a niche iron blade mixed with sea stone components. Michiru Takedo's thoughts had begun to wander. But his body was obedient to instinct and subconsciousness, engaging in a high-intensity fierce battle with William selflessly, as if he had forgotten fatigue and pain. This genius boy, who was only 15 years old this year, even a year younger than Kamado Tanjiro and the others, inexplicably had a new memory surface in his mind at this moment. Is this older brother? In the dilapidated thatched hut, his older brother, lying in a pool of blood and already on his last breath, was staring intently at him, uttering words one by one in a weak voice. I know. Michiru's Mew is the Mew of Infinite. It's the Mew that can unleash infinite strength for the protection of others. Just this one sentence made Michiru Takedo recall the little things he had shared with his older brother, Yuichiro. At the same time, it also caused the cold expression he had maintained towards the outside world to gradually thaw, adding a few points of gentleness. Immediately after, new memories and screen feed appeared. This time it was father? It should be something that happened even earlier than the previous memory. At that time, he was also much younger than he was now. He was lying on his father's lap, and the surrounding environment was very blurry and very white. Mother and older brother also surrounded him with smile on their faces. Papa, Mom, we all saw it, you put in a lot of effort, Michiru. Father stroked his face and gave a gentle smile. Michiru, you must remember, humans are creatures who can burst forth with extraordinary strength for the sake of others besides themselves no matter when. You must hold the heart of protection for others to make yourself strong, remember? I remember. At this moment, William was surprised to find that Michiru Takedo's face was already wearing a gentle smile, and on his left forehead and right cheek, faint blue floating cloud patterns were appearing. This is... The next second, Michiru Takedo's original copy somewhat scattered eyes suddenly became sharp. With a movement of his figure, he turned into an afterimage and rushed out of the zone covered by steam. His speed was so fast that William couldn't intercept him in time. He then plunged headfirst into the sparkling, cool seawater, which forced the former to abandon the thought of pursuing him. That is. Jitamiaka in the distance was also surprised. Michiru Takedo's speed was too fast, he didn't see clearly. Roar! Suddenly, a rising wave pillar erupted on the sea, and a blurry human seemed to exist within it. Water-breathing, landform, twisting vortex. Michiru Takedo actually used a water-breathing sword technique in the sea, even using the water-breathing sword wind to wrap around a large amount of water spray from the seawater. This turned it into a water dragon twister reaching over 10 meters high, with vortex water spray comparable to sharp blade, surging towards William's position. In fact, every Hashira had practiced water breathing to some extent. Because it was the most suitable breathing style for beginners, ever since breathing style appeared, the Demon Slayer Corps had never lacked a water Hashira. Michiru Takedo thought that if enough seawater could submerge the ability user, it could temporarily exhaust the ability user, and then he could seize the opportunity for a fatal blow. However, his stamina was only enough to support this one attack. On the opposite side, facing such a large-scale sea escape, William's first thought was not to meet it head-on, but to use steam jet to evade. But just as he moved with high-speed movement towards the upper right, he was shocked to find that the water dragon twister had actually made a prediction of his movement, colliding towards him as if by coincidence. At the same time, Michiru Takedo's voice, accompanied by the moonlight, gently sounded in William's ear. It's useless, I've seen it, everything about you. Chapter 508, A Proposal for Cooperation. At this moment, Michiru Takedo's sensory world was incredibly magical. First of all, his hearing, sense of smell, taste, and touch, these superfluous senses, were in a semi-closed state, while his vision and sixth sense became extremely active, and his attention was also hyper-focused. In his eyes, everything in the world became very slow. The surrounding spinning water dragon twister slowed down, and the splashing water droplets falling to the ground also slowed down. Even the mass of white steam that was rapidly spraying seemed to enter slow motion in midair. He could even strongly feel the opponent's next move. The most magical thing was that he could clearly see the muscle tissue, internal organs, and even the blood flowing in the blood vessels inside the body of the distant Jitamiaka, as if he had lost the barrier of his skin. This, in the spirit domain, is called the selfless state. Basically, as long as it involves a supernatural world, there will more or less be similar states. For example, the transparent world and the Demon Slayer world, which is called the Supreme State. Similarly, there is also the state of selflessness in the Prince of Tennis, Muso Tensei and Fist of the North Star, and the observation hockey of the world. To speak on a larger scale, Ultra Instinct in the Dragon Ball world is probably the true supreme state among this type of ability. And the transparent world of the Demon Slayer world is equivalent to having an additional special ability of X-ray vision on the basis of observation hockey. However, compared to true observation hockey, its perception range is still a bit too small. The next moment, in the court on the beach side, a violent roar and shaking sounds immediately erupted, causing many participants deep inland to subconsciously turn their gazes. It turned out that William, seeing that dodging was impossible, immediately used his full strength, meeting Michiru Takedo's controlled water dragon twister head-on with the maximum possible high-temperature steam. Seawater, this kind of thing, if it is to have an effect on an ability user, then it must submerge more than half of the ability user's body parts for the effect of exhaustion to appear. Therefore, ability users can completely use their own ability to dodge or block the approach of seawater. Rumble, The high-temperature steam and the icy water waves clashed together, producing a large amount of water vapor. The rolling white mist not only swallowed up both sides' court but also swept out in all directions. This caused Jitomyuka to have no choice but to quickly flash and leap onto the top of a coconut tree. In the blink of an eye, it had already turned into a vast expanse of white world. Those who didn't know would have thought they had arrived at a certain sky island thousands of meters above. Clanging sound. Suddenly, another clanging sound of blades clashing rang out. This made Jitomyuka inwardly think not good. This indicated that William had not been defeated by Michiro's move just now, and he immediately leaped and rushed over. On the other side, William, emitting high-temperature steam from his entire body, first glanced in surprise at the similarly hot and red Nichiren blade, then suppressed the complex emotions in his heart and looked at Michiro Takido, who was facing him. What a pity, the amount of water you gathered wasn't enough. After I evaporated more than half of it, the remaining water only reached near my knees. Michiro Takido did not speak, because he was now even breathing with all his might. However, I am very interested in these strange abilities of yours. You must properly introduce them to me later. After speaking, William voluntarily withdrew the blade of Yukishiro, then pulled back a few meters, allowing the arriving Jitomyuka to support the nearly collapsing Michiro Takido. Immediately after, William saw Jitomyuka take out a white pill from his chest and put it into Michiro Takido's mouth. When the latter bit it into pieces and swallowed it with difficulty, a faint purple aura appeared on his skin, and at the same time, his tired gaze quickly became lively. What is this thing now? William truly felt that his eyes had been opened today. These otherworlders seemed to always be able to take out surprising things, which made him increasingly want to talk with the other party about future cooperation matters. This is the purple butterfly emergency pill. Jitomyuka answered patiently, seeing that the other party did not make a killing move against Michiro Takido. However, don't think that you hold the absolute advantage. Oh? William raised an eyebrow and smiled. Are you saying that you can defeat me? Just now, Michiro personally demonstrated the effect of seawater on you. It was just because of his stamina and insufficient cultivation of water breathing that the situation of insufficient water volume occurred. Seeing that Michiro Takido could already stand up on his own, Jitomyuka no longer supported the other party. Instead, he placed his right hand on the sword hilt of his Nichiren blade and said coldly to William, "Let me add something about our identity. He is the Mist Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps, and I am the Water Hashira. Do you want to try fighting me?" As he spoke these words, behind him was a stretch of night great sea under the moonlight. The endless sound of waves seemed to be the great sea constantly cheering for Jitomyuka. This made William fall silent. He was thinking that if this person in front of him could really summon more seawater, then he could truly threaten his life. The main thing was that the current environment was a bit awkward for him. Originally, as a steam man, water should have been standing on his side, but the other party's swordsmanship could actually control seawater to attack him. Also, he suspected that this Jitomyuka in front of him could also, like Michiro Takido, have strange patterns appear on his face as they fought, not only increasing his speed significantly but also allowing him to predict his actions. Right. The other party's blade was also very strange. It could actually become hot and red. If you weren't a Logia user, this would also be an extremely threatening strange ability. Alright, since we already have a deep understanding of each other, let's talk about cooperation matters. How about it? William sheathed Yukishiro into its scabbard, revealing his initial extremely friendly smile. Cooperation? Jitomyuka and Michiro Takido felt bewildered. Yes, as otherworlders, since you can come to our world, you should also be able to frequently return to your own world, right? A look of anticipation flickered in William's eyes. Yes. Jitomyuka, maintaining caution, did not say how many times a year or how long each time. So you can completely bring items from this world back to your own world, or bring items from your own world to this world, right? The still very young William somewhat excitedly spread his hands and smiled. This is where your value lies. Once I have a Stargate pass, we can completely cooperate to establish a cross-world trading company during this period when most people are restricted from entering and exiting the Stargate. Just think about it, how great the interests would be if things from the world were sold in your world, and these interests can also bring you abundant wealth and resources. Jitomyuka and Michiro Takido exchanged a glance, while William's speech continued. You take office within the world government, so you certainly don't have much time. But I can be responsible for the supply of goods from the world side, transportation, and other matters, while you only need to help bring a portion of the goods and establish channel organizations in your world. Chapter 509, The Death Rate is Too High. After listening to William's many ideas for the future, Jitomyuka and Michiro Takido also understood his meaning. However, Both of them were naturally indifferent to fame and fortune, so they weren't very interested in the cross-world trade he mentioned. But they weren't fools either and knew that having more money would indeed be more convenient. For example, devil fruit users, which originally required a large amount of merit to exchange for, could be directly purchased from the black market outside if one had money. Even they, as other worlders, had heard a little about these things. I will relay your suggestion to Lord exactly as it is. For now, we can exchange phone numbers and contact each other later. Jitamiaka looked calmly at William. Yubuyashiki? William raised an eyebrow and asked in confusion. Is he your leader? Lord is our demon slayer Koroyakata-sama. Jitamiaka put away the Nichiren blade in his hand and gave a brief introduction to the basic situation of the Demon Slayer Corps. Although the Demon Slayer Corps was currently considered disbanded, they still clustered around the Yubuyashiki family and still referred to Kageya Yubuyashiki as Oyakata-sama. So that's how it is. William stroked his chin and pondered for a moment, then revealed an even happier smile, meaning, you originally had an influence in your world that has been maintained for nearly 1,000 years. I think although all of you have now transferred to Wano Island in our world, a large portion of your personnel should still be left there, right? That's correct. Jitamiaka hesitated for a few seconds before nodding in admission. At that time, they had indeed deliberately left a portion of their personnel in the Footbase and Rooster Island country, which is now the second special zone. For example, the Fuji House, the Kakushi, Butterfly Mansion, and several cultivators, as well as the commercial company Yubuyashiki used to earn a large amount of funds for the Demon Slayer Corps. This was so that if some people on one side needed to return to their own world, they could reactivate these personnel and strongholds to provide assistance in various aspects. In other words, the Yubuyashiki family and the Demon Slayer Corps higher-ups did not completely stake everything on the world government, but instead left themselves a little leeway. This way, even if they who came to this side of the world were completely wiped out one day, the spark of the Demon Slayer Corps and the inheritance of breathing style would still be preserved in their own world. Then this makes it easier for you. After this combat power competition ends, please be sure to have that Lord discuss it with me. I believe this matter will greatly benefit both our sides. William looked at the two sincerely and said softly. I understand. Jitamiaka naturally wouldn't refuse, while Muichiro Takido beside him listened silently with a smile. William was also happy to see him agree. He hadn't expected this combat power competition to bring him such a great opportunity. However, William also understood that to seize this great opportunity, he first had to secure a top 100 qualification himself. Otherwise, the other party could completely switch to someone else for cooperation, and even if the other party was generous enough to cooperate with him. Without a Stargate pass, he would be completely blind to the situation in the Demon Slayer world, or completely rely on the other party's information transfer. This was absolutely unacceptable to him. Thinking of this, William maintained his gentle smile and suggested. According to the competition system, the selection trial in each sea area will last for 40 days until 100 contestants are selected to participate in the top 100 competition. Meaning, even if we successfully pass this first round, there will definitely be a second round later. At that time, our opponents will all be experts who have emerged from their respective first rounds. Among them, there are certainly many hockey powerhouses from the Grand Line or other devil fruit users. So, how about the three of us team up and form a squad? Jitamiaka and Muichiro Takido exchanged glances and nodded in agreement with rapport. After all, no matter how you looked at it, having one more Logia user teammate would definitely make things much easier. Moreover, the other party seemed to be a merchant who wanted to cooperate with their side, so they should be able to trust him somewhat. Of course, necessary vigilance could not be let down. Jitamiaka spoke. Since your ability is steam, and you also deliberately stayed by the seaside like us, it means the seaside environment is also helpful to you. Then the three of us will stick to this tactics. William's gaze flickered, and he instantly understood Jitamiaka's deeper meaning. But he could also understand, and he indeed had no malicious intent. He then showed a smile and agreed. Okay, that is naturally the best choice. Since we are now teammates, can you satisfy my curiosity? What? Jitamiaka looked at him in confusion, only to see William's gaze turn to Muichiro Takido, showing a smile. I want to know, why can your body, which isn't very strong, unleash a sword master's flying/attack? This is the effect of breathing style. Jitamiaka had no intention of concealing it and explained some things about breathing style. After all, breathing style had already been popularized within the world government, and it wouldn't be long before it spread throughout the world. I see. Using a special breathing rhythm to enhance the explosive power of physical ability, and also having the effect of activating mental power, combined with matching style swordsmanship, allows you to unleash sword wind with different special effect. William was thoughtful, then softly inquired. Can I learn this breathing style? Or rather, can C-star person learn it? Yes. Jitamyaka nodded and said. The world government hasn't restricted our freedom to teach breathing style, but we've just met, so it's impossible to teach you so easily. His words were quite blunt. If it were an ordinary person, they might get upset, but it perfectly fit William's way of thinking. Who made it so he didn't have the strength to make the other party comply obediently? Then he could only reason with them. Then after I reach a cooperation agreement with your Yubu Yashiki Oyakata-sama, I presume you can teach me? Yes. Jitamyaka nodded. Then what's with the pattern that suddenly appeared on your face? Why did your speed become so much faster as soon as it appeared, and you could make a prediction of my movements? And also, why did the blade in your hand heat up and turn red before? William continued to look at Miyochiro Takido and asked. I'm not very clear about this either. Jitamyaka turned his head in confusion to examine the light blue pattern on Miyochiro Takido's left forehead and right cheek, but the latter also gave a shake head, looking confused and saying he didn't know. But just as the three of them remained silent, Miyochiro Takido spoke again with some hesitation. I remembered a somewhat blurry memory. It seems I heard Father once say that during the Sengoku period in our world, the first Demon Slayer Corps swordsmen all had Demon Slayer marks similar to demon marks appear on their bodies. Could this be? Jitamyaka nodded slightly. Indeed, I think I also heard my master, Sekenji Yorakadaki, mention this legend. We should ask Oyakata-sama about the specific matters. But at this moment, the image of Komodo Tanjiro appeared in his mind, and he thought to himself, Tanjiro's forehead seems to have a similar pattern as well. Alright, then what about the blade heating up? Seeing that they weren't deceiving him, William could only helplessly shift the topic to the niche iron blade. Miyochiro Takido raised the blade in his hand, which had already cooled down, and examined it twice, then gave a shake head again. I don't know about this either. This is the first time this phenomenon has appeared. William was speechless. Well then, meaning these magical otherworld abilities were appearing on them for the first time? He had a faint feeling that if he weren't a Logia user, he would most likely have been cut down by now, right? Speaking of which, if he didn't have the Logia system Steam Fruit ability, he wouldn't have been able to participate in this top 100 combat power competition. The death rate was simply too high. Chapter 510, even the world government didn't expect this. Perhaps even the world government didn't expect this. This multiverse combat power competition seems to have become a platform for certain ambitious individuals. They are not only competing and fighting among themselves but also selecting future partners from one another. Thinking about it, it makes sense. This competition gathered most of the experts and talent who are interested in the other world but don't want to be overly restrained. They are essentially similar types of people, so it's natural for many to find others they click with. Furthermore, even if they ultimately obtain the top 100 qualification, they will definitely need companions when venturing into the other world. Of course, there are also lone wolves. Therefore, among true experts, there is generally no need for a life and death struggle in the selection trial. More people choose to have powerhouses team up. After all, there are a full 100 spots to advance. So, 2 or 3 people teaming up doesn't create any conflicts. So, how do you determine if someone is an expert? It's very simple. Those weaklings who are easily eliminated by themselves, and don't even have time to withdraw, are definitely not experts. This directly led to the phenomenon where, in the selection trial arenas of every sea area, powerhouses banded together, and the strong became even stronger, while the weak either had no chance to band together or were wiped out together. It's not that no one successfully withdrew at a critical moment, but compared to the total number of nearly 10,000 participants, it was still far too few. After all, to withdraw, you have to manually press the red button on your right wristband. The risk involved in this process is actually very high, and many people died right there. Time passed day by day, and in the blink of an eye, it was already the end of June. The selection trial schedule for the 4 Seas was nearing its end, which was a few days earlier than the originally planned 40 days. At this moment, inside the Room of Authority in Holy Land Marie-Joise, Vice Chairman Burwo Gabriel from the Other World Strategy Committee was respectfully reporting to the 5 elders sitting on the sofa about the many issues discovered during this selection trial competition. That's right. The directly subordinate department for the Multiverse Combat Power Competition is the Other World Strategy Committee, because officially, only they are qualified to issue Stargate passes. As for Vice Chairman Burwo Gabriel, he was originally the Vice Minister of the State Council Administration Department. At the Other World Strategy Committee, he is also primarily responsible for administration management. Therefore, he is the one leading the actual work of the Multiverse Combat Power Competition. During the selection trial process of this first combat power competition, the confirmed total death toll has exceeded 10,000, and those severely injured, blinded, or with severed limbs also exceed 10,000. Hearing this, the 5 elders all slightly frowned. They vaguely realized the problems within this, their consciousness stirring. We have summarized the main reasons into 4 points. After speaking, Vice Chairman Burwo Gabriel paused, and only continued after St. Topman Warkery, sitting in the middle position on the sofa, nodded for him to proceed. Firstly, powerhouses teaming up. We originally thought that an expert should be capable of handling a situation where they are surrounded by multiple people. Therefore, we not only didn't restrict participants from grouping together and teaming up, but even allowed them to participate by traveling on a single ship. But we overlooked the difference between a group of weaklings banding together and a few experts teaming up. The latter can easily massacre the former, as well as experts acting alone. Secondly, we did not restrict the use of bioweapons. Poison gas bombs were used in 13 selection trial matches, causing significant casualties. In the South Blue area, there was even a situation where only one person walked out of the island alive. The more the 5 elders listened, the more displeased they became. The object of their displeasure was not only the oversight of the Otherworld Strategy Committee but also those bastards who used poison gas bombs. This also caused the atmosphere within the room of authority to quickly become oppressive. But Vice Chairman Burwo Gabriel continued his report nervously. Furthermore, we found that it is difficult for participants to press the withdrawal wristband in time during a critical moment. Even if they do press it, the opponent's attack often doesn't stop, leading to the death of the withdrawing participant. Therefore, we believe we should improve the withdrawal method, or give the withdrawal device the ability to protect the withdrawing participant after it is activated. This will require the help of the Academy of Science. St. Marcus Mars nodded and said, "This old man will have the Academy of Science find a way." "Thank you very much." Vice Chairman Burwo Gabriel bowed in thanks. "Since you have discovered these issues, have you thought of any solutions?" At this moment, St. Jaga Ursha Saturn spoke up with a serious expression and asked. Vice Chairman Burwo Gabriel quickly replied. "Reporting to the 5 elders lords, our committee has discussed this in multiple meetings and has come up with some preliminary countermeasures. We still require much guidance from the lords." "Speak." "Yes." Vice Chairman Burwo Gabriel said in a deep voice. "First, the simplest issue of bioweapons can be solved simply by setting rules to prohibit them in the next combat power competition." St. Jaga Ursha Saturn, leaning on his cane, glanced over and said, "What about abilities originating from oneself, like a poison ability user such as Magellan? Those originating from personal abilities will not be prohibited, only atom-based bioweapons." St. Shepherd Jupiter then asked, "What if a participant brings a pet with some kind of large-scale destructive capabilities?" This. Vice Chairman Burwo Gabriel hesitated. That should also be prohibited from being brought. What about mechanical creations? For example, if an inventor participates with their robot troops, would that be allowed? St. Marcus Mars also thought of a possibility. Sweat started beading on Vice Chairman Burwo Gabriel's forehead. He subconsciously clenched his fists. They really hadn't thought of these things. There was truly no experience to draw upon for something like the combat power competition. Everything had to be organized from scratch. Feeling helpless, he could only lower his head and apologize. "I am very ashamed. We still need to discuss and deliberate further on this aspect." "All right, continue telling us what you've thought of." St. Topman Warkery did not blame him, which allowed Vice Chairman Burwo Gabriel to breathe a sigh of relief. "We believe the main reason for the high number of casualties in this combat power competition is due to the competition format. The participants have varying levels of strength, and they were put together in a free-for-all. As mentioned before, weaklings can band together, and powerhouses can too. This directly led to some talent who clearly have aptitude and potential being eliminated after encountering irresistible opponents. This is actually a very serious internal drain of talent." Although the 5 elders had varied expressions, they clearly all agreed with this statement. Can you say an 18-year-old sword master has no aptitude? Yet, in the selection trial, he encountered a hockey expert from the Grand Line and was brutally slaughtered. This is truly a regrettable matter. Therefore, no one knows how many such examples there were among the tens of thousands who died previously. Therefore, we believe the selection trial for the next multiverse combat power competition should be changed to a point system. For example, participants could be placed in batches on an island with targets prepared in advance. Then, assign different points to these targets. Participants only need to defeat these targets to score points. Finally, the top 100 will be selected based on their scores, while strictly prohibiting participants from harming each other. For example, defeating a Kubanrai world gets 1 point, defeating a wild beast gets 2 points, a carnivorous dinosaur gets 3 points. We can even include pure titans, combat robots, giant insects, and man-eating demons. Of course, if suitable targets are discovered in future other worlds, they can also be added. This way, Although the danger of death still exists, it is much better compared to participants slaughtering each other. Chapter 511, It's Actually Him? Bing bang. Bang, on the 5th floor of the Noah's Ark ship tower, on a court that was more than twice the size of a normal tennis court. Two figures were dragging after images at extremely high speed, hitting a yellow beam that resembled a laser back and forth. Because the speed of the yellow beam was simply too fast, it always generated visible air currents every time it cut through the air. The roar of sonic booms was incessant. If ordinary people were to witness this scene, the first part of their body that couldn't handle it would probably be their ears. Beside the court, Stussy's gaze held a look of envy. Standing beside her, the Yubuyashiki four sisters watched dumbfounded, completely stunned. It was truly the first time they had seen such a terrifying scene. Compared to this, the contests between the Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps seemed a bit too ordinary. In the court, it was none other than him engaging in a casual game of play tennis with his first wife, Queen Historia. This was why Stussy was envious. Because before, she was the one responsible for accompanying him in this somewhat difficult and painful activity, though she enjoyed it. But now, she had been replaced. On the other hand, didn't care about her feelings at all, as he was teaching Historia how to play tennis. His woman couldn't not know how to play tennis. Moreover, he was considering using play tennis as a way for the harem women to resolve conflicts. At least it was more civilization than combat with real blades and guns, right? Although Historia had lived in the luxurious manor of the Rice family since childhood, her mother was just a maid, and she was merely an illegitimate daughter. So, she was not only born on a ranch but also lived there with animals for over a decade. And her grandparents, who raised her, never spoke to her except to teach necessary knowledge, so she had no opportunity to come into contact with a nobility game like play tennis. Thus, she could only start learning from scratch. Fortunately, was well prepared and very patient. Coupled with the fact that Historia, who inherited the power of the 9 titans, had extraordinary controllability over her body, she was able to skillfully serve and return in no time. She had basically reached a level where she could happily play tennis with him. Of course. To ensure his own experience, only maintained his speed and strength at a similar level to hers. Even so, the scene of them playing was enough to leave ordinary people dumbfounded. After all, Historia was using the strength of the ultimate giant to deal with every tennis ball hit. At this moment, the queen was wearing a battle skirt of armor formed from white crystal, and even the racket she held, made from atom wood and Doflamingo's threads, was covered with a layer of diamond-like transparent crystal on its surface. The key was her speed and strength, which combined the flexibility of the female titan, the speed of the jaw titan, the stamina of the beast titan, and the strength of the armored titan. However, Historia did not transform into a giant, but controlled her body size to about 2 meters. This was a new mode she obtained after consulting with Ymir in the coordinate space, referencing the human-beast form of zone users. It was called the half-giant form. This way, she could use a portion of the power of the titans while in a normal human physique state, unlike previous hosts who caused a huge commotion every time they transformed. In addition, over the past few months, Historia had also used the perfect Type 1 cell enhancement serum, which significantly enhanced her physique in all aspects. Then, under Im's personal guidance, she quickly mastered the basic techniques of the 6 powers, and her swordsmanship also greatly improved, although she had not yet reached the sword master realm where she could cut steel. However, both armament hockey and observation hockey had awakened, and she could now use the coating technique relatively skillfully. Bang! Im slightly increased the force, which was instantly detected by Historia opposite him using observation hockey. Although her arms were already sore and aching from the intense and prolonged combat, the stubbornness in her bones made her gaze firm. Panting heavily, she gripped the racket with both hands and used her full strength to return the ball. Roar! The moment the crystal-coated net came into contact with the yellow beam, a cloud of white mist erupted in a ring shape, instantly turning into a gale that swept across the entire court. This caused the Yubuyashiki four sisters to retreat in panic, looking as if they were about to fall over. Fortunately, at this moment, Stussy stood in front of them and used the emission technique to spread out a layer of armament hockey, blocking the strong wind that was comparable to a typhoon surge. Emission was originally an advanced technique of armament hockey. In the past, even vice admirals didn't have much chance to learn it, but ever since the command department and the military and political department announced the public availability of cultivation techniques and even assigned the military and political department to teach them, many vice admirals of the 3 forces had successively mastered this technique, which allowed them to release hockey outwards like a shock wave. Stussy was naturally no exception. Meanwhile, Historia, the person who received the return, was struggling extremely hard with the tennis ball on her racket in the eye of the storm's center. But no matter how hard she tried, she could only maintain this stalemate. Slap! Finally, she could no longer hold on. The racket in her hand flew out, and a tennis ball smashed the court behind Historia to pieces, as if it had been hit by a large-caliber jet cannon shell. Ugh! Historia, half kneeling on the court, covered her wrist in pain. At the same time, she looked up at him with a resentful gaze, saying nothing. Mikasa in the distance watched her worriedly. Let's stop here. Although it's the first day, you learned very well and played quite well. However, was completely unconcerned about this. He calmly looked at the light green sky above his head and said softly. Alright, today, add a piece of meat and a cup of milk to the dinner of all Eldian people. Yes, Lord. Stussy responded softly upon hearing this, then walked to the side, took out a golden transponder snail, and conveyed Lord Demu's order to the Otherworld Strategy Committee in the name of the Celestial Dragons. Queen Historia immediately showed a smile upon hearing this. Having often gone out to see things, she clearly understood how difficult the lives of her subjects were now. Meat food was only available for 3 meals on 2 days each month, other times, it was pickled vegetables with bread. After she returned to her palace with Mikasa and a group of maids to prepare for washing up and resting, Stussy had also finished her call. She walked inside with 3 documents that had just been handed to her by her subordinates and reported. Lord Demu, these are the list of promoted personnel from the 4 Seas selection trial, the files of the first challenger for the Summit War, and the reform plan for the next selection trial sent by the 5 elders. Oh? Casually threw the racket onto a rack in the distance. He curiously picked up the challenger files. After multiple discussions among the 5 elders, the Summit War had become a special channel specifically used to absorb civilian admiral-level combat power. Basically, as long as someone successfully challenges a current admiral, they can directly disregard the so-called qualifications and merit and be directly granted the vice admiral rank. Even if they fail, as long as they show admiral-level potential, they can also be granted the rear admiral or vice admiral rank. Speaking of which, to obtain the qualification to challenge, one must first defeat a current vice admiral within 10 minutes. This difficulty is no joke. And when Im saw the photo on the document, he instantly recognized him. It's him. Chapter 512, Bad Things Turn into Good Things. Who did Im see that surprised him so much? Fujitora. A great swordsman, a Paramsha system gravity fruit ability user, the future Marine Admiral Fujitora in the canon. He actually showed up on his own initiative to join the world government? Im originally thought this person would stay in the wilderness for a few more years before coming out. He didn't expect him to be unable to hold back so quickly. That's good too. This way, the famous highest combat power from the canon are basically gathered. But hasn't he gone blind yet? Im looked at the photo of Fujitora with sharp eyes in the documents and speculated in his heart, his eyes are perfectly fine, won't this affect his blindness? He remembered that in his previous life, some One Piece fans believed that the reason Fujitora could pull asteroids from outer space to act as meteorites was because his blindness amplified the range of his observation haki. Although he felt this idea wasn't very reliable, even though this wasn't Earth, the world was still tens of thousands of kilometers away from the asteroid belt. If Fujitora could really locate asteroids just by relying on observation haki, then he could easily scan any corner of the entire world, even the seabed tens of thousands of meters below, the sky island tens of thousands of meters above, and even the moon would be within his perception range. If an expert could reach this level of observation haki just by being blind, the world government would have long ago established troops specifically to cultivate this type of super biological radar to monitor the whole world. In comparison, Im was more inclined to believe that Fujitora used the gravity fruit's ability. Just like Eno used the rumble fruit's ability to greatly increase the range of his observation haki. However, since it says here that Fujitora's single move caused a Marine Vice Admiral to be unable to stand up from the ground, it seems his strength hasn't been greatly affected by his eyes being perfectly fine. Now the question is who should be Fujitora's opponent. According to the rules of the Summit War challenges, a challenger needs to defeat the current admiral within 5 days, or be evenly matched and remain undefeated to be considered a successful challenge. This current admiral can be an admiral from the 3 forces or an honorary admiral. As for the candidate, it depends on who Im chooses. Only then did Im discover there was another paper under this document. He took it out and saw it was the files for the second challenger of the Summit War. Armaki. Also the Green Bull who served as a Marine Admiral in the canon, his ability is the Logia system forest fruit. His current position is Army Headquarters Colonel. There was nothing he could do. When he joined the world government, there was no green channel like the Summit War or World Military Draft that only looked at combat power. It seems he feels that being a colonel is beneath his talent. But can active soldiers apply to participate in the Summit War? Im recalled the relevant rules the 5 elders had shown him before. It seemed there really were no restrictions in this regard. The main reason was that most people in the military were understand of their own strength level. Just like Bullet, although he would challenge Garp once every year, he didn't apply to challenge in this summit war. Firstly, he was already an army lieutenant general and an admiral candidate. Secondly, he knew he couldn't defeat true admirals like Sengoku, Whitebeard, and Linlin at the moment. As for Aramaki and Fujitora, they needed to rely on the summit war to quickly obtain the status of an admiral level, or even the epithet of an admiral candidate. Then that means 2 admirals will need to be chosen as their opponents. To be honest, Im was full of interest in this. He really liked to appreciate scenes like this that wouldn't or didn't appear in the canon. He then looked at Stussy and said, I remember the summit war takes place after the combat power competition ends, right? Yes, Lord Amu. That's good. It seems I still have plenty of time to consider. Who would be the most interesting opponent for Fujitora and Green Bull? He really needed to think carefully. After all, such an opportunity was rare. Immediately after, he took the 4C selection trial promotion personnel list into his hand and scanned it. The reason he wanted to look at this was to find the talent he was familiarized with, and then have his subordinates focus on cultivating and making arrangements based on the situation. Each C area selection trial selected 100 people, so there were 400 people on this list. Not too many, not too few. Krieg, Sindri, Arlong, what are all these guys? He muttered to himself in his heart, oh, right, Mountain Bandit King is indeed a character. Those Hashira from the Demon Slayer Corps, Mima Amatori, Mizunkia Butsuji, and Levi, it seems they all passed smoothly. That's within expectations. Although it's a bit metaphysical, these characters who have a certain role in their respective worlds indeed have stronger luck compared to ordinary people. There's no basis for this, but it is indeed an objectively existing fact. However, this doesn't mean they won't encounter calamities or death, it just means their luck will be slightly better. Huh? At this moment, Im's eyebrow twitched, because he saw several very familiarized names and photos on the list. Yusuf from the East Blue Competition Zone? Ben Beckman from the North Blue Competition Zone? The files showed that one of them was 25 years old this year, and the other was 28. They were indeed in their prime, but their appearance was truly a surprise. One was a deadly accurate sniper, and the other was one of the smartest candidates on the world acknowledged by a certain creator god, and even the so-called 4 Emperor's crew first mate in the future canon. So what was there to consider? He directly had Stussy bring him a pen, and then drew a circle on it indicating special attention. Yusup's sniping talent, which troops should he be placed in? And that guy Beckman, he needs to be arranged even more carefully, otherwise it would be a crime of wasting top-tier talent. Im fell into deep thought for a moment. The Marines have been bled too much by me. Should I transfer these 2 over to replenish them? After a moment, he felt that the arrangement for these 2 couldn't be decided immediately. Only then did he turn his gaze to the person ranked first on the entire list. Because this was a Logia user, the 5 elders felt he was the most important talent. But in Im's heart, the value of Beckman and Yusup was far greater than that of an unknown Mumai Logia user. Morgan William from the East Blue Competition Zone, a Logia System Steam Fruit ability user. The development potential of this ability is quite good. He should be able to create various clouds with his bare hands. He is a good prospect for the Marines, it's just a pity he doesn't want to join the military. Suddenly, Im remembered that since Beckman and Yusup chose to participate in the combat power competition, it meant they also didn't want to join the military. This was a bit troublesome. As a transmigrator, he naturally hoped that these top-tier talent could be absorbed into the world government. However, the rules of the combat power competition were there. Although he was fully capable of destruction the rules, he still didn't want to do so if it wasn't necessary. Forget it. I'll have someone contact them first and ask. Im sighed inwardly in his heart, then returned this list to Stussy and began looking at the final reform plan for the next selection trial. To be honest, he was a bit confused why it needed reform. Only after he finished reading did he suddenly realize. So many people actually died? Indeed, the internal friction is too severe. The competition system has big problems, it must be reformed. Whether it was the world government or Im, they both lacked experience in holding world-class competitions. Therefore, there were bound to be many problems in this first session. But that was nothing. Everything is perfected step by step. As for those who died in this session, they could only blame their own bad luck. What else could be done? However, those who were severely injured must be rescued with all effort, and all medical treatment expenses must be waived. Even if they lost limbs, they must be helped to grow them back. In Im's view, this matter could not only save these unlucky talent, but also serve as a propaganda opportunity to enhance the world government's positive image in front of the citizens from all walks of life. Right, have the propaganda department send people to film the entire process. This way, bad things would turn into good things. Chapter 513. This is just fooling them. The first multiverse combat power competition selection trial successfully concluded. During this period, whether it was the citizens from the major seas within the world, or the audience from the three worlds of Kabinarai world, Demon Slayer world, and Titan world, all felt their horizons broadened. They gained a clearer understanding of what constitutes an expert and what constitutes a powerhouse. It also significantly reduced the sense of unfamiliarity between these worlds. Although this selection trial resulted in tens of thousands of deaths and tens of thousands of injuries, it can be said to have fully displayed its cruelty for all to see, but aside from frightening a small number of people, it didn't cause much of a stir in public opinion. Especially the Sea Star persons. Because for nearly 1,000 years, they have lived in a large environment of continuous slaughter, often threatened and attacked by pirates, mountain bandits, slave catchers, gangs, and even mentally ill patients with great strength. Therefore, their psychological tolerance for death and blood is quite high, completely incomparable to Im's previous life. As for the people of Kabinarai world, they are even more formidable than the Sea Star persons. They live year-round in an atmosphere separated from the Kabinarai world by just a wall. The Eldian of the Titan world are also similar. So overall, only the people of Demon Slayer world are relatively more naive, more sentimental, and more sensitive to death and slaughter. However, the world government doesn't have time to care about them. In addition, the propaganda department and the medical academy launched a joint rescue operation, successfully demonstrating to all the audience that every participant, no matter how severe their injuries, received the best treatment while their lives were preserved. They only needed to rest on a hospital bed for a few days to return healthily to their respective hometowns. And it was all free. Although this left the medical academy's doctor team almost exhausted, it indeed worked as Im had envisioned, causing countless citizens to praise the world government's mercy. Following this, the world government, citing the need to avoid such large casualties from happening again, put forward the reform plan for future selection trials. This made people feel even more that the world government was indeed constantly progressing. The tens of thousands of deaths were no longer mentioned by anyone except their own relatives and friends. The main reason was that they had all signed a life and death agreement beforehand, and no one forced them to participate, so naturally, no one would champion their cause. In comparison, more citizens were concerned about the 400 contestants who fought their way out of the Four Seas selection trials. Some enterprising commercial companies had already produced booklets containing each contestant's basic files and their performance in the selection trial, selling them at high prices and making a fortune. Some companies even opened betting pools, wagering on which of these 400 contestants would pass the rematch and enter the true top 100 finals. Of course, there were also bets on who would be in the top 10, top 3, and first place. This could be said to have become a nationwide topic. It's just a pity that there was no network to provide them with a platform for extensive discussion, but even so, every country and every island was incredibly lively. In this way, these 400 promoted contestants became well-known stars among the audience of the Four Worlds overnight. Among them, the people living in Logetown in the East Blue, the Lubni Kingdom in the North Blue, the Hazel Kingdom in the South Blue, and Farmer Island in the West Blue were the most excited group. Because the world government temporarily arranged the contestants promoted to the top 100 competition here for rest and recuperation. 2 days later, they will travel under the guard of marine warships to a certain island in the first half of the Grand Line to engage in fierce competition once again. Logetown. Well then, excuse us. Inside an inn specifically used to host contestants from the East Blue competition zone, Coulson, whom they hadn't seen for a while, walked out of a room with his colleague. All right, Mr. William refused. What a pity. Indeed, a Logia system ability user, if properly trained, could produce at least another top-tier vice admiral. The two chatted in low voices as they headed to the next target room, their tones filled with regret. In fact, Coulson also felt fortunate for William, fortunate that he encountered a world government that had undergone considerable changes. If it were in the past, he was sure that after the combat power competition ended, William would be forcibly taken away regardless of whether he became one of the top 100. If he complied, he might be arranged into the Marines or other organizations, but if he refused, William's next destination would either be impelled down or receiving special education at Cypherpol headquarters. Coulson's colleague sighed. I hope things go a bit smoother next. According to the files, the probability of success is quite high. Coulson maintained a smile and comforted the other person, then stopped and knocked on the second door. Who is it? The door didn't open, but a cautious inquiry sounded from inside. The two weren't surprised. Mr. William had the same reaction just now. Coulson said gently. Hello, Mr. Yesabu. We are senior directors from the World Government Administrative Department, sent here to discuss some matters with you. Yesabu inside seemed to hesitate, but after a moment, He opened the door and said, "Come in." "Thank you." Coulson thanked him politely, then entered with his colleague. Yesabu glanced at the empty corridor on both sides before closing the door again. "Mr. Yesabu, I won't beat around the bush." Coulson didn't sit on a chair but turned around and waited for Yesabu to come over before speaking. "The world government hopes you can join Cypherpol, putting your sniper talent to use in the most suitable place, and also contributing your strength to the world government in the future multiverse conquest." "Cypherpol?" Yesabu chuckled lightly. "I thought it would be the army or marines. We did consider that before, but given your ability in sniping, we believe a sniper's role is not significant on a large-scale battlefield, but rather of immense value in assassinating important targets." Coulson seriously relayed the situation that the higher-ups had told him in advance. "This is indeed." Yesabu thought for a while and had to admit this was correct. Using his sniping ability for assassination was indeed terrifying. He could easily shoot through someone's forehead from several kilometers away. Seeing him start to hesitate, Coulson quickly continued. "Furthermore, as long as you accept the invitation, you and your family will move to the Red Line to live, receiving the best protection and treatment, and your future children can receive the best education and upbringing." Yesabu didn't care much about his wife. He was a true wanderer, marrying simply to leave behind an heir. "But if I join you, won't I lose my freedom? I still want to visit those other worlds," Coulson said. "Of course, you will definitely be subject to certain restrictions, but Cypherpol has always been the vanguard department for exploring new other worlds. In other words, as long as you become part of Cypherpol, you can enter the Stargate immediately and have priority access to the world government's latest high-grade resources and technology equipment, keeping your strength consistently in the first echelon of the entire world." This was just him fooling him. After all, high-grade resources also needed to be exchanged for merit, but Yesabu had never left the East Blue until now, so how could he know this? "So if I join you, do I need to withdraw from this combat power competition?" Yesabu was a bit reluctant to give up the prize money and rewards from the top 10. That's right, he was that confident in himself. No, you can participate normally in this competition, but not in the next one." "Alright then." Chapter 514, Effort, Who Isn't Putting in Effort? Titan World. Noah's Ark was currently in a green space. Although from here one could see the royal capital below and the Eldian diligently working outside the walls, for the people below, the massive airship that had obscured the sky for a long time had vanished without a trace. Im really liked this other world space opened up by Oimo using the Door Devil Fruit ability, so he often flew to high altitude to overlook the common people of the lower realm. How to put it? This feeling was indeed very pleasant, a psychological state of being high above and controlling everything. Every time this happened, he could even keenly sense that his spirit was slightly stimulated, and the quality of his hockey also improved by that little bit. As such, Im naturally liked this daily activity even more. There was nothing he could do. He couldn't use this Yamato temporarily. Who told him he decided not to give the souls of this world to King Yama, and he didn't want to be constantly urged by the other party. So, he would wait until the Stargate to the next world was opened. It was just that this way, the cultivation of the soul was also suspended, and the improvement in hockey naturally fell into stagnation again. However, Im wouldn't let a small obstacle stop him. He increased his investment of energy into medicine knowledge and medical skill, as well as in-depth research on life return. The appearance of Mizan Kibutsuji actually gave him great inspiration. Life return could allow one to freely control any corner inside and outside the body, including the internal organs, digestive system, self-healing system, etc., by infusing consciousness. This meant that this was actually a cellular level ability, and it was also a technique that could be cultivated and improved by oneself. Theoretically, as long as the development of life return reached a sufficient level, one could completely and gradually become a perfect being like Mizan Kibutsuji. This was a great treasure of the Sea-Star civilization, but it had been overlooked by Sea-Star person, including the former Imu, before. The main reason was the imperfect education system and insufficient understanding of science, which led to limitations in thinking and imagination far inferior to the people of his previous life. In fact, with Im's current ability, he should be able to make a severed arm grow back quickly. But who would break their own arm for no reason? About 10 minutes later, Im used teleportation to return to the empty throne. As soon as he sat down, he saw Stussy walking into the main hall on the red carpet in high heels, then respectfully reported. Reporting to Lord Imu, 20 minutes ago, news came from the 5 elders that the Yasup you were concerned about has agreed to join Cypherpol, but Ben Beckman refused the invitation on the grounds that he wanted to be an otherworld adventurer more. In addition, Morgan William, a Logia system steam fruit ability user highly concerned by the 5 elders, also refused to join Marine headquarters. After listening, a hint of regret flashed in the depths of Im's gaze, but on the surface, he maintained natural calmness. Between Yusuf and Beckman, the latter was clearly of greater value to the world government. But it was just like this, it wasn't enough for him to make a big fuss about it. Forget it, it's quite good to have one highest combat power among the top 100 group. Perhaps there will be a place where he can be useful later. Im thought to himself. Lord Imu, also, Cypher Paul found the young man named Kuro you mentioned a few days ago in the East Blue. He is now being taken to the Cypher Paul headquarters for training as per your order. Understood. Im's slightly depressed mood recovered quite a bit. Although the world's most intelligent Beckman was gone, gaining 100 plans who ranked among the top 3 in world intelligence was also good. As for the other one, Nami, she hadn't even been born yet. How is Redfield doing? According to the news from the 5 elders, Redfield has not yet found the op fruit. Stussy replied softly. However, he found a Parimsh's system spring fruit in the Berenic Kingdom, and Cypher Paul personnel from the North Blue are already on their way to receive it. Spring fruit. Needless to say, Im naturally remembered Bellamy. His age seemed similar to Drake's, so he should be in his teens now. But he didn't know where he lived when he was a child, maybe in that Berenic Kingdom. However, he felt that Bellamy's potential was just average and not worth sending someone specifically to look for him. Anything else? The matters for today have been reported. Im nodded, stand up and instructed. Have Hippocrates prepare. Today's surgery tutorial will continue. Yes. Stussy quickly walked out of the main hall after hearing this to notify him. She was actually very confused about why Lord Imu wanted to learn medical skill, but she only thought about such matters in her heart. Im sat on the throne on the triple platform, silently watching her retreating figure leave. Actually, he had thought before about whether to invite a famous doctor from the medical academy to be his medicine teacher, or to conceal his identity and appearance and directly enter the medical academy to study, feigning weakness. But in the end, he felt it was unnecessary and dismissed these thoughts. Mainly, Im learned that the medical director of this Noah's Ark, Dr. Hippocrates, was himself a world-class doctor. Compared to Dr. Kura, he might be slightly inferior, but compared to Crocus, he was quite evenly matched. This level of medical skill was more than enough to teach him. While the people below were preparing, Im thought for a moment and used teleportation again, disappearing from the throne. He first glanced at Enel, who was undergoing high-intensity martial arts training with Humandrels and Kung Fu Dugong, then arrived at the Finger Pistol Shina district in the southern part of Walmaria. This place originally had very dense building structures, but now most of them had been cleared into open ground, and the interiors of the buildings had also been completely opened up, turning into large dormitory where hundreds of people lived together. Because at this time, the Eldian needed to perform labor in various places on Paradis Island. For example, planting or cutting black gold bamboo, or digging for ice-burst stone inside the mountain caves, so the streets inside the city appeared very desolate. Im was not interested in these. Instead, he quietly watched Historia, who was doing gymnastics and exercising with many children in a newly built orphanage. Both her and the surrounding children had constant smiles on their faces, as if everything outside had nothing to do with this place. This was the result of Historia's effort. It was strange. Even though the suffering of this world could be said to be entirely due to the orders he issued, Im just liked to see Historia's current appearance. An Eldian queen who was very cheerful, strong, and dared to bear the responsibility of her nation. He knew this woman was actually very hardworking. Not only did she spend a few hours every day accompanying children at an orphanage, but she also had to pay attention to whether her people were being excessively abused by the guards. After returning to Noah's Ark, she also had to desperately train her swordsmanship, martial arts, hockey, and the use of various power of the Titans. Im quietly watched for 10 minutes through a layer of light green space, then silently disappeared from the spot again. After returning to Noah's Ark, he began to seriously practice various surgery technique with Chief Steward Hippocrates in an operating room. She was putting in effort, and wasn't he doing the same? Chapter 515, Number 10. Number 10. Since the start of this multiverse combat power competition, time has passed particularly quickly in the Sea Star world. And for Mizn Kibatsuji, it was since Crocodile was captured, because ever since then, he's either been living in constant fear or buried in busyness. This fulfilling life was both somewhat tiring and full of novelty. When he was previously locked in a cell at the Biochemical Research Institute, he couldn't have imagined living the life he has now. Not only is he a senior researcher, researching various strange creatures or viruses with a group of biochemical scientists from different worlds, but he can even stand in a classroom and lecture a group of admirals and vice-admirals. In the beginning, it was impossible not to feel nervousness, fearing that if he wasn't careful and offended someone, he'd be cut in half by a blade. Although he wouldn't die, it would still be quite painful and scary. But after teaching for a long time, and as both sides familiarized with each other, Mizn Kibatsuji also got used to getting along with a group of big shots. The key was that none of these vice admirals or admirals made things difficult for him. They all listened attentively, occasionally asking questions about life return. If there was anything headache-inducing, it was probably Admiral Garp from Marine Headquarters, who would often fall asleep while listening, and a large bubble would inevitably appear on his nose. It was very interesting. Fortunately, when he slept, he would at most tilt his head back, and his snoring wasn't very loud. Later, he specifically kept Garp behind and talked in his office, mainly asking if there was anything he was dissatisfied with regarding his teaching. At the time, he thought that since it was his first time being a teacher, perhaps there were areas where he wasn't doing well. No choice, couldn't afford to offend him, but when Admiral Garp broke his right hand index finger in front of him and then grew it back within 10 odd seconds, Miz knew that this big shot's control over cells had already reached a considerable level. Although still somewhat unfamiliar, leading to a recovery speed that couldn't instantly grow like his own, this was merely a matter of proficiency. This was already quite remarkable. There were nearly 100 vice admirals and admirals from the three forces, sea, land, air. Admiral Garp was the first to be able to regenerate a broken finger. For the others, reaching this level would probably take another 2 or 3 months. From then on, he didn't say anything more. He could tell that this big shot was a genius among geniuses in terms of martial arts. On the deck of a steel cruise ship being escorted by 4 marine warships, Mizuki stood on the edge, letting the sea breeze blow across his delicate face, recalling his teaching experiences over these past few days. This made the corner of his mouth curl slightly. He actually quite liked being a teacher. The key was that having lived for 1,000 years, he still possessed basic intelligence. He clearly understood what this qualification represented, being the biology teacher and life return instructor for the world government's whole army admirals and vice admirals. As long as he didn't court death by thinking of rebellion, he would always receive key protection from the world government. All participating contestants, please proceed to the deck for assembly within 10 minutes. We will arrive at the second round island venue in 2 hours. Next, we will introduce the competition format. At this moment, the captain's announcement sounded from the loudspeaker inside and outside the cruise ship, interrupting Mizuki's thoughts. Actually, he genuinely didn't want to participate in this combat power competition, because neither the reward for the top 100 nor the reward for the top 10 was of much use to him. Or rather, besides the prize money, he already had everything else. Speaking of which, where are the people who promised to provide protection for me? Mizuki scanned the surroundings and complained speechlessly. I still haven't seen anyone. It seems the world government doesn't attach enough importance to me. What if I get killed by some powerhouse during the competition? At the same time, the 400 contestants inside the cabin appeared on the deck at an extremely fast speed. Before long, it was filled with all sorts of strange people and races. You could even see 2 members of the mink tribe among them, seemingly people who had drifted overseas. However, the fact that they dared to actively participate in the competition also indicated a high degree of trust in the world government, at least not fearing being captured and sold. Just then, everyone saw a long pushcart with 5 white boxes being pushed up by 2 marine soldiers, and then heard the loudspeaker above sound again. The next competition format requires you to form squads with 4 other contestants and proceed through cooperation. These white boxes contain white balls with numbers. The 5 people who get the same number will be teammates. Then you will conduct squad versus squad confrontations on that ice fire island. Each member of the winning team will receive 10 points. The person who delivers the final blow to a defeated enemy member will receive 1 point. Finally, after 40 confrontation matches are completed, personal scores will be tallied for ranking. The top 100 will enter the final top 100 ranking match. If multiple people have the same score as the last ranked person, an arrangement will be made for one-on-one elimination rounds. Contestants have the freedom to choose whether to accept or forfeit. When the words from the loudspeaker stopped, the deck fell into a deathly silence, but everyone frowned and sized up the competitors around them. However, most people's gaze was focused on Morgan William, Mizuki Butsuji, Tenjin Yuzui, Mima Amatori, Levi, Beckman, Yusuf, and those experts who clearly possessed hockey. In fact, they had already quite familiarized with each other. A few days ago, while resting in the 4 Seas, they had also bought the selection trial winner introduction booklet, so they naturally knew which people had great strength. They previously thought they would be formidable opponents, but now it seemed that if they could form a team with them, they would be sturdy big shots to rely on. The loudspeaker seemed to be waiting for them to digest the information, and only after a moment did it continue to issue instructions. Now, please line up and come forward in order to draw your white ball, and then display the number for everyone to see. The contestants on the deck naturally had no opinion. Starting from the people closest to the boxes, they walked forward, reached into the white box, took took out a white ball, and held it up high. Veldish, number 27. Mina, number 36. Jonathan, number 54. Karen, number 26. Jerome, number 75. Augustine, number 80. Halloween, number 46. Celia, number 68. Walsh Paco, number 73. Ewing, number 16. 400 people came forward in groups of 5 to get their balls, and this process took nearly an hour to complete. However, after everyone got their numbers, the deck fell into a deathly silence. Even the Marines on the surrounding warships who were escorting and watching the show were dumbfounded. Not to mention the hundreds of millions of audience members in the Sea Star world, Kabinari world, Demon Slayer world, and Titan world's Paradise Island. They were all stunned, staring with open mouths at the 5 people on the virtual screen and the numbers on the white balls in their hands. Mizuki Butsuji, number 10. Morgan William, number 10. Levi, number 10. Mima Amatori, number 10. Tenjin Yuzui, number 10. Chapter 516, There is a certain risk of death. As soon as the members of Squad 10 came out, they gave people a sense of unreality. How could it be such a coincidence? The 5 most famous contestants all got the same number, but the process of getting the ball just now was done in front of everyone, which made people have to believe it was a coincidence. It must be said that the people of these 4 worlds are quite simple and honest. They don't have so many complicated thoughts in their minds and strongly believe everything they see with their own eyes. In fact, there was still something fishy going on. After all, how could there truly be such a coincidence in the world? The mastermind was him, who was in another world, in another space. This first multiverse combat power competition actually only had people from 3 other worlds. If these few people were completely scattered into different teams, it would look too troublesome for him. It would be better to put these people together so that he could not only concentrate on watching the competition but also save a lot of time, and the program effect would be better. As for how the people below achieved the effect he wanted, that was not the matter he needed to consider. Him only looked at the result. It seemed that the people below had done a good job, at least to the extent that others could not find fault. Besides Squad 10, there were also the relatively special Squad 5 and Team 12. The members of Squad 5 were Ben Beckman, Yusuf, Meko, Krieg, and Arlong. Team 12 was entirely the Demon Slayer Corps, with members consisting of Water Hashira Jitomiyuka, Mist Hashira Muchiro Takido, Flame Hashira Kyojiro Rengoku, Wind Hashira Samai, and Serpent Hashira Obanayaguro. Compared to the others, Team 12 was the most outrageous. How could it be such a coincidence, so coincidental that 5 people from the same world happened to be put together? It wasn't that there were no audience who raised objections, but they had no evidence and could only grumble a few words. The key was that this type of competition format was the first time anyone in any world had ever seen it. So even though the various supervision mechanisms were very imperfect, most people were still immersed in the novelty and couldn't extricate themselves. And just as Im thought, such coincidental teams were already very interesting even before the combat began. As for the feelings of the other participants? Who cares? On the deck, Mizuki Butsuji glanced at the 4 teammates who had actively walked over. His mood was very speechless. No matter how he looked at it, he was the strongest in this team. How could this be? He wanted to be protected, not to protect others. Tenjin Yuzui's gaze towards Mizuki Butsuji was also very complex. This was the demon progenitor he had been single-mindedly thinking of killing before, and now they were teammates in another world? If there really was a god who controlled fate in the world, was it too much of a joke on him? To be honest. Seeing Mizuki Butsuji's seemingly harmless smile, his palms felt a little itchy, and he could only forcefully suppress the urge to draw his Nichiren exploding blade and slash over. Calm down, I'm not a demon anymore. You must remember this. Mizuki Butsuji easily saw through his inner thoughts but didn't care at all. In his opinion, this sound Hashira just hadn't learned about the matter he was about to do. After all, Kyojiro Rengoku and Sanmai definitely hadn't had time to tell the other party about the previous matters. In other words, he regarded Tenjin Yuzui as his capable subordinate in the future, and naturally wouldn't be angry because of his current ignorant behavior. I am Morgan William, an East Blue person from the world. I am a Logia System Steam Fruit ability user. It is an honor to meet researcher Mizn here. Please give me your guidance. At this time, William also smiled and actively greeted Mizn, then swept his friendly gaze towards Tenjin Yuzui, Mima Amatori, and Levi. Hello, friends from different worlds. Hello, I am Mima Amatori from Cypher Palate, from the Kabinari world of Stargate number 2. Mima Amatori did not call his world ancestral world like Mekko and Hazumi, but openly used the 3 words Kabinari world. In his opinion, there was nothing that couldn't be mentioned. It was also very appropriate for the world government to use Kubanari World as the code name for his world of origin. After all, the only thing that could be considered a characteristics in that world was the Kubanari World. As for claiming to be a member of Cypher Pol 8 Agent apostrophe, that was because Cypher Pol 9 Agent was a secret team according to regulations, so they could only say they were Cypher Pol 8 Agent to the outside world. For a time. In the 5-person squad, Mizunki Butsuji, Morgan William, and Mima Amatori exchanged pleasantries and communication with smiles on their faces, while Tenjin Yuzui and Levi stood silently on the side with no expression. In fact, Tenjin Yuzui was also a social bandit. If Mizunki Butsuji wasn't there, his voice would probably be the loudest right now. As for Levi, he was truly too lazy to speak with them. Instead, he narrowed his eyes and observed the composition of the other squads, especially Squad 5 and Team 12. Besides those, only the teams mixed with Fishman Tribe, Mink Tribe, or hockey experts were worth noting. Levi naturally knew about hockey. But he had joined the world government for too short a time and had taken the Cell's enhancement serum for too short a time, so he only had time to master the wind-breathing style and accompanying swordsmanship. But he would not fear those who could use hockey because of this. He already knew the specific effects of armament hockey and observation hockey, so he would have a way to deal with them when the time came. In Levi's opinion, observation hockey was actually more troublesome than armament hockey. The latter just gave people an invisible armor. He could just slash more times with his twin swords, it wasn't without consumption. On the contrary, the ability of observation hockey to sense aura and predict movements was very troublesome. Half an hour later, under the patient waiting of countless audience, this steel cruise ship, protected in the center by 4 marine warships, finally arrived in the sea area near the so-called Ice Fire Island. Wow! This. What is this? It's amazing, it's like a myth scene appearing before my eyes. Is this the world? Is this the world government? In the air, 2 Air Force flying warships were using visual dendenmushi to broadcast a bird's-eye footage of the entire environment of Ice Fire Island to the audience of the 4 worlds, which caused many people to exclaim and sigh. On the large and small virtual screens in various places in the world nations, a world had already appeared that was half iceberg and snowy ground, and half volcano and scorched ground, with a circular lake in the center area. In addition, there was an ice castle and a black stone castle at the upper and lower ends respectively, and in front, there were 3 main roads. Every few kilometers along each main road, there was a gun turret over 10 meters high, totaling 3. That is to say, both sides of the main roads were dense forests, except that the trees on the snowy side were covered with snow, while the trees on the scorched side were all withered. On one side, the cold wind howled, and on the other side, the heat wave surged. Attention all participants, we have arrived at the rematch stage venue, Ice Fire Island. I will now give the final introduction to the competition format. Please listen carefully. Due to the excessive casualties in the previous selection trial, the world government has specially added 2 new regulations. 1. During this rematch stage, intentionally killing opponent members is prohibited. Causing them to lose combat ability is sufficient, such as incapacitation or unconsciousness. When necessary, protection personnel will intervene to stop lethal attacks. If the attacker is subsequently determined to have acted with malice, they may be disqualified. 2. In the competition, if one side is the first to destroy all the cannons on the opponent's turrets, they can also obtain the final victory. Note that these cannons will automatically attack opponent members, and there is a certain risk of death. Chapter 517, Anyone is Terrifying. Looking at the full view of Icefire Island on the large virtual screen, and listening to Stella's pleasant introduction, Im's mood was completely satisfied. This was the fun of being a transmigrator. If there were another transmigrator from the same place as him participating in this rematch competition mode, they would definitely understand what Im was finding joy in. Isn't this just multiplayer online battle arena? And a live-action version at that. Actually, the previous selection trial was also like this, wasn't it just battle royale? He just hadn't thought it through in such detail back then, and the world government below, being inexperienced, hadn't considered everything properly, leading to so many casualties. Getting back to this rematch. This was something Im had constantly been thinking about before he transmigrated. It was just that back then, he fantasized about how great it would be if there was some kind of high-technology virtual reality that could allow real human to play as heroes in a 5-on-5 MOBA competition. Now, this is a variation of that form, letting the participants of the combat power competition put on an arena competition where real human act as heroes. Moreover, Im intends to make this competition mode permanent. Every future multiverse combat power competition will have its contestants compete on Ice Fire Island. Ha 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 ha. A strong sense of dark amusement surged in his heart. On the surface, Im maintained a calm, even in different expression, but internally, he was already laughing loudly, maniacally, explosively. This is what's interesting. A world that's becoming more and more fun is the world I want. And it's the world that belongs to me. At the same time, the audience from the four worlds were also attracted by this novel competition mode. Everyone was discussing animatedly, talking about the harsh environment on Ice Fire Island, and how they should play according to the rules to win. Naturally, the 400 participants on the deck of the cruise ship were also looking out at the distant island while discussing in low voices with their newly formed teammates. They don't let us kill human, that makes it boring. Exactly, if we can't kill, isn't it just like child playing games? I think it's pretty good. At least our lives are guaranteed. This is the great era of conquest of the multiverse. I don't want to die prematurely. At least I have to taste the women from Otherworld. At this moment, the loudspeaker above sounded a broadcast again. In 1 hour, Squad 1 and Squad 2 will have the first competition. Please, the players from both sides, under the guidance of the Marine soldier, proceed to the warship you need to board. They will take you to the castle dock on both sides of the island. Immediately, everyone's gaze focused on the 10 human in those two squad. The most noteworthy was Squad 2, because there was a fishman tribe member among them. It was Chu from the Arlong Pirates, a kissing Gurumi fishman over 2 meters tall, with blue skin, large red lips, and dark gold hair. According to the records in that booklet, this was a strong fishman skilled in fishman judo, capable of controlling water flow to a certain extent, and even spitting water gun. However, just like Arlong, he was quite disdainful of the 4 human teammates beside him. The relatively tall Chu didn't even bother to look at them, just stood with his right hand in his pocket, looking at Ice Fire Island. For him, neither the volcano high-temperature environment nor the iceberg low-temperature environment was comfortable, because Fishman Island was a place that was warm all year round. Looks like we need to hurry to the lake in the center, slurp soon. 2 squad human were led by several Marine soldier onto a warship. After deciding the court by tossing a coin, they quickly sailed towards the 2 ends of Ice Fire Island on their respective warship. As for the remaining participants, most chose to return to the cabin and discuss more specific matter in a member's room. As for the situation of this competition, they could watch it inside the room through a small visual den mushi. A portion also noticed that there were fewer human on the deck, so they simply stayed there, found a corner position, and discussed in low voices while enjoying the sea breeze. These basically belong to the type who were bold due to their high skill, completely unconcerned about potential leaks. Just so. Squad 5, Squad 10, and Squad 12 were all like this. However, compared to the latter 2 squad whose atmosphere was harmonious, Squad 5 seemed to be full of conflicts. Huh? You lowly race, it is already a tremendous glory to be able to become teammates with me, a noble fishman. How dare you disobey me? Arlong clenched his fist and raised it, bearing his mouth full of sharp teeth, glaring fiercely at the 4 human in front of him and threatening them. Although he had been dealt with by that Marine colonel a few years ago, his nature hadn't changed much because of it. Instead, as his fishman karate level increased, his confidence became even more inflated. In the previous selection trial, he had used the lake and river in the center of the island to slaughter hundreds of human expert. Huh? When Krieg heard this, he suspected his ears had deceived him. He subconsciously used his finger to pick at his ear canal, and picked out a small piece of yellow earwax on his fingertip. He saw him flick his finger casually, flicking it onto Arlong's face, then sneered. How come I remember that a few hundred years ago, you were always classified as fish? If we're talking about being lowly, isn't the fishman tribe the lowest among all race? Krieg's 2 rhetorical questions and that piece of earwax caused a red light, condensed with killing intent, to flash in Arlong's eyes. Shorty, you dare to insult fishman in front of me, Arlong? Are you looking for death?